Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021 will start. Welcome to this forum. Especially, we'd like to welcome all the viewers who are watching this forum through YouTube. I am Kim Kyung-mi, the MC of today's forum. Nice to meet you all. Thank you very much. Recently, Seoul City has announced Seoul Vision 2030 and has proposed 4 visions of the city: city of coexistence, city of global leaders, city of safety, and city of future emotion. Today, in this forum, we will discuss what we need to think and do to move forward towards the future we want. In today's forum, we have the topic of unleashing Seoul's attractiveness as a global city. We have invited 12 scholars and experts from home and abroad. For 200 minutes from now on, we're going to share various opinions and insights. So Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021 will begin. I'd like to ask for your continuous interest in this forum. Today, we're offering simultaneous translation in both Korean and English. This forum is being live streamed through YouTube to the whole world. I'm going to briefly explain about this event. First of all, we will listen to the remarks from Mayor Oh Se-hoon and CEO of Korea Jungang Daily, Mr. Park Jang-hee, for welcoming remarks. And Professor Tyler Cohen, the renowned economist from George Mason University, will give a keynote address. This event is divided into 2 sessions. In the first session, under the theme of enhancing the city's competitiveness, we will listen to video presentations from 3 presenters and have a special dialogue with Korean scholars. And in the second part of the event, we have the topic of making cities more attractive and have presentations and discussion with Korean scholars and experts. Lastly, we have an event where you can certify that you have been watching this forum online. We have 2 sessions, session 1 and 2. If you capture the screen of session 1 and 2 and share the captured screen photo on your SNS, we're going to select some of you and give the cultural gift voucher and Galaxy Buds Pro. Please don't forget the hashtag. The hashtag will be Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021. Then, let us begin this forum with a welcoming remark from Mr. Oh Se-hoon, the Mayor of Seoul.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to meet you today, and welcome to Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021. I'm Mayor Oh Se-hoon of Seoul City. The theme of today's forum is Unleash Seoul's Attractiveness. Today, we will diagnose the present status of Seoul, recover city's competitiveness, and discuss our future strategies. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Park Jang-hee, the CEO of Jungang Ilbo, and his staff members for being here. And I also like to thank our keynote speakers, Professor Tyler Cohen, and other 11 experts from and abroad who will participate as the speakers of today's forum. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic that has prolonged for 2 years, the world is now facing unprecedented crisis and going through rapid social and economic changes. While cities around the world are doing their best to revive their cities, Seoul, the heart of Korea, is also at a very important crossroad to preoccupy the stance as a global leader and lay a foundation for new reform for the future of all. As you may well know, 10 years ago, Seoul was one of top 10 cities with the global city competitiveness. If we made more efforts, just a little bit, we could rank with other global cities like New York, London, and Paris to become one of the top 5 global cities. So we had such dream and hope. However, in 2010, our city competitiveness was ranking number 10, but it went down to 17 last year. And our global financial centers index was 11 in 2011, but it now dropped to 25. So one of the priorities for Seoul is to revive the city competitiveness and unleash Seoul's attractiveness. When we revive the city competitiveness, financial competitiveness, and future competitiveness, we will attract more people, more investment, and revive the economy and jobs, and eventually increase the quality of life for all of the citizens. In order to realize this vision, we established Seoul Vision 2030. One of the keywords is making Seoul a global leader city to become one of the top 5 cities around the world. So the MC mentioned that we are going to make a future attractive city and economic and financial hub. And I believe that global leader city is the most important keyword for today. We want to make Seoul Asia's economic hub, startup growth city, cultural and tour city, and industrial convergence and innovation city so that we can attract more people, companies, capital, technologies, and information, and eventually become the global top city. Also, in order to form the quality business environment and attract more talents, we will lift the regulation and expand the infrastructure, and we will become the mecca of the financial city, startup city, and R&D city. And also, the K content that is loved by everyone around the world. Squid Game was number 1 content in the world, and the new Netflix series Hell is also very popular. And we will connect this together with beauty, food, and shopping so that people can enjoy the immersive culture and tourism resources in Seoul, so that we can attract 20 million foreign tourists to this global city. I believe that the discussion that we will have in today's Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum will be the foundation to make a leap forward as one of global top 5 cities in the world. I sincerely hope that we will do our best and you will join us in the journey to become the global city where anyone wants to visit, live, and invest. I hope to hear from you a lot today. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 말씀 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much
서울시장님께서
for your
본 포럼의 그
remarks.
중요성과 의미에 대해서
He
다시
has
한번
emphasized the
짚어주셨는데요.
importance and meaning
그리고
of
선도도시로서의
this
서울의
forum
경쟁력을
as a
오늘
leader
이 포럼에서 확인해 보시기 바랍니다.
As a global leader
다음으로는
of the city,
박장희
you
중앙일보
can
대표
see the status
이사님께서
of Seoul
함께해
through this
주셨는데요.
forum.
환영의
Next,
말씀
I would like to invite
이어주시겠습니다.
Mr. Park Jang-hee, the CEO of Korea Chungang Daily. Hello everyone, I am Park Jang-hee, the CEO of Korea Chungang Daily. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Mayor Oh Se-hoon and other officials of Seoul City for inviting us as the co-organizer of this forum. This forum provides us with an opportunity to discuss with experts from various fields the attractiveness of Seoul and its competitiveness as the capital city of the Republic of Korea. Cities across the world have competitively appealed their own attractiveness for a long time. Seoul has also made multidimensional efforts to let its attractiveness widely known to the world. Attractiveness of a city changes by time. It requires a harmony of multiple attractive elements for a city to shine. In this regard, today we are having a very meaningful forum where diverse experts will share their insights and opinions. The city of Seoul announced Seoul Vision 2030 last September. This vision aims to restore the lost city competitiveness and improve the quality of citizens' life through a new blueprint for the future. It presents the city's four policy orientations, such as the city of coexistence, city of global leader, city of safety, and future-oriented city of emotion. Seoul will also become the hub of global beauty industries featuring K-beauty, K-fashion, and K-lifestyle. Recently, K-pop led by BTS, K-dramas such as Squid Game, and many other various K-culture, including Korean food, have become popular throughout the world. Now, we have the right chance and conditions to appeal the attractiveness of Seoul to the world. I hope that through today's forum, we will share good proposals to enhance the competitiveness of Seoul and create synergy with our citizens participating in this forum. Many people have experienced challenges due to COVID-19. It is important more than ever to return to our normal lives. I believe that citizens will begin to feel comfortable with living their daily life and prepare to receive visits from citizens from across the world through the forum today. I wish for a successful forum today, and Korea Jungang Daily will be there for you to help improve the competitiveness of Seoul. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 말씀 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very
오늘
much
행사에서
for your
폭적인 개최를
welcoming
축하해
remarks,
주셨고,
congratulating the
서울의
successful
도시경쟁력이
hosting
첫
of
번째
this
순서로
event.
마지막 연도 함께해
And
주시겠다라는
thank you very
든든한
much
말씀까지
for sharing
환영의
with us
말씀으로
your
전해
commitment
들었습니다.
to the growth
자,
of
이어진
Seoul.
순서는 기조
Next, we would
연설입니다.
like to
앞서
listen to
소개해드린
the
대로
keynote
미국
address.
foreign policy와 영국 이코노미스트
As I
선정 가장
introduce
영향력 있는 경쟁자를
Professor
유명하신
Tyler Cohen, who
코hen님의
is the
기조
most
연설이 준비가 되어
influential
있는데요.
economist
위기를
selected
극복하고
by the Economist
성장하는
of the
도시를
UK,
주제로 기조
I will
연설
talk
지금부터
about
함께 하시겠습니다.
how to grow together after overcoming the crisis.
Hello, this is Tyler Cowen. I'm here to talk about tourism, especially with respect to cities and also Korea. So right now, what we are seeing in the world is that tourism truly is in flux. This is a highly unusual time. There are major changes afoot when it comes to tourism. For instance, the pandemic is still underway, especially for East Asia. Travel restrictions are in place. So when those travel restrictions fall away, we're going to move into a very different world of tourism, really quite different from what we had been living in before 2020. Also, at some point in time, Chinese and Indian tourists will resume on the world scene. That was a major trend before the pandemic. More Chinese tourists almost everywhere, more Indian tourists almost everywhere. And the question is, when travel restrictions truly are eased, where will those individuals wish to go and why? And finally, there's what I call the mobile revolution for tourism. So if you traveled in the 1990s, you used a paper map, you just walked around, you used road signs. Now people, instead of buying guidebooks, they use their mobile devices everywhere for everything. And this too will influence where they wish to go. A big change we have seen during the pandemic. The question is this going to stick? And that has to do with the countryside. So is the countryside more popular than before? If you look at home prices, if you look at where people are moving, over the last 2 years in most nations, there has been a pronounced move toward the countryside, people wanting to stay or live in nice homes, to be in the suburbs, to be in more remote areas. Cities have become less useful as many of the amenities of those cities have been closed. So one possibility is this change in preferences, this change in tastes, maybe it's going to stick permanently, also for tourism. What we're seeing right now is just tough times for the tourist sector. So the economies that rely the most on tourism, And in Asia, this would be the Philippines and Thailand. In Europe, it would be Greece and Portugal. Those economies took very big hits. And the question is, again, once travel restrictions truly are over and people feel safe, are those economies going to make a big comeback? On the positive side, in most nations, household savings are relatively high, and they're high for a very specific reason. During the pandemic, it has been relatively hard to spend money on many things. So to ask just a general question, during the pandemic, this has been hard to see, but if you ask what kind of cities do people want to visit, I think successful cities for tourism exhibit the following traits or qualities. First, excellent cultural amenities. Also, that there's one top university in a city. It makes the city more interesting. People then want to live there, and that makes it a better place to visit. Can a city support 2 jobs for a married couple? Does the city have social tolerance for different kinds of minority groups? What are the airports like? What are the travel connections like? Is it a cosmopolitan city? How affordable is the city? What are taxes like? The regulatory climate? What are the special reasons to go to a particular city? Those can all be reasons to want to live in a city, but they're also reasons to want to visit a city, because ultimately those 2 factors are closely connected. People often want to visit cities where other people wish to live, like Berlin, Paris, London, New York, Seoul, Tokyo. So with that framework in mind, let me say just a few things about some particular European cities and what their future looks like for tourism. So if we think about Europe, obviously some of the major European cities for tourism would be Paris. I think the future of Paris for tourism is looking very good. France has done relatively well moving into a safe position for COVID. They have been fairly successful with vaccine mandates and requiring vaccine passes for special attractions. The thing they need to overcome, I think, is some tourist uncertainty about, if I show up in Paris, will they actually let me in to the restaurants and museums? The answer basically is yes. But one thing we see with tourism is that even small uncertainties or small transactions costs can make a big difference for how people perceive a given locale. Rome, Florence, Venice, and Italy. Italy in recent times has done one of the very best jobs fighting back COVID. They've even had somewhat of an economic recovery. I would say Italy and the future of Italian tourism, those are right now looking very above average. The performance there has been excellent. Italy is not always thought of as a country good on logistics, good on operational matters, but in the last 3 to 6 months, they've really done a first-rate job. So I would be bullish on Italian tourism. London, I think, is a city that was one of the first to really truly open. They proclaimed Freedom Day. I was in London right after that. It was striking to me that you could go around the entire city, and except for a few locales, you wouldn't even see people wearing masks. Now, you can debate whether or not this is good policy, but I think it is good policy for attracting tourists if you're looking only at that consideration. So I would put the major European cities actually is on a track to do very well attracting tourists looking forward. Now, we could also consider some major tourist-related cities in the United States. There, I think the picture is more mixed. So if you look at New York City, obviously a major tourist attraction in the United States, New York City is still having problems in Midtown. The United States has not really eliminated COVID. As I'm giving this talk, we're having 1,600 people die every day. That's well below our peak of 4,000 a day, but it seems it's still far too high, and the United States has not really developed a reputation for being good at fighting back COVID. So when it comes to the United States, I think the tourist demand will continue to be very high for national parks, for Yellowstone, for the Grand Canyon, right? For Yosemite. But when it comes to New York, also San Francisco, I think the cultural amenities will be seen as a bit risky. New York is very densely populated. People might feel uncertain riding the subway. Getting into the United States from many countries has been hard, or returning back to your home country maybe has been hard. So I think over the next year or two, or maybe more, tourism in the United States will not recover as it is doing in Europe. And the big problem will be in our cities, not in our national parks. The national parks already are overcrowded, and everyone wants to go there because they're beautiful. You're outdoors, they're relatively safe. And I think that perception will continue for a long time, even after the pandemic truly is over. Now let's turn to Asia. A number of Asian cities we could talk about. Tokyo, for instance, I think Japan is still having a hard problem reopening. So a few days before recording these remarks, they announced that business travelers only had to do 3 days quarantine from a number of countries, including the United States. My sense is that just won't attract many more people. 3 days quarantine is still seen as quite a bit. And furthermore, if you get the wrong test result, even by mistake, you're in a very awkward position. So I think the countries that have promised the best results to their people, well, good for them. The Japanese government has done a pretty good job. But once you build in the expectations that you will come close to zero COVID, I think it's very hard to reopen the country. And I think a good deal of East Asia moving forward, again, even after the risks have passed, will have this perception that it's not really geared up for tourism or not really tourist friendly. And if you look at, say, Singapore, I think exactly the same issue is there. Singapore, on the whole, has done a very good job, but they are finding it hard to truly and consistently reopen. People are getting out of the habit of going there, out of the habit of doing mixed business and tourism kinds of trips or meetings. And again, I think Singapore will be very slow to recover. Singapore does have some good outdoor attractions, such as the zoo and the bird park, but they don't really have the same reputation as United States national parks. Now, let's talk just a bit about Korea and also the city of Seoul. I think Seoul, over the longer term, really has a big potential to grow its tourism. So I think in the short run, the problem is simply there's not that much cross-country travel in Asia right now. But when you think longer term, Seoul has wonderful infrastructure. I think it has actually a lot of the best food in Asia anywhere. I think there's a bit of a reputation problem. Outsiders don't think of Seoul and Korea as having some of the very best food in Asia, but I think this will be marketed better over time, and it will really be a major draw to the country. If you're looking for a city or a country where there's both amazing food and it's quite undiscovered by outside visitors, I think Korea is your number one pick there. Singapore has amazing food. Obviously, Japan has amazing food. But there's so much written about where to go. You end up going somewhere. Everyone else is going to the same place. Korea, and Seoul in particular, is somewhere where you can simply find things that no one else has found, put it on Instagram, boast about it, feel excited about it. In terms of friendliness and safety, I would give Seoul an A+. I think the general problem, other than the food not being better known, is simply people don't exactly have the ability to articulate what is the single reason to want to go to Seoul or Korea. So if you think of going to California, well, you can articulate some particular reasons. You could see Yosemite Park. You might visit Hollywood. You could go to Silicon Valley. You could go to San Francisco. People think of Seoul as a very nice city, but there's not a single must-see attraction the way, say, for California, you also could cite Disneyland. For Florida, you could cite Disney World, and so on. So I think having this one focal reason to go is still lacking. Over time, I think it's likely that focal reason may become Korea's version of Hollywood, and that is Korean popular culture. So K-pop, Korean movies, now Korean TV shows are especially popular all over the world. It's amazing to me that the number one watched show on Netflix in my country, and I believe in the whole world, it is a Korean TV show, not an American TV show. And that makes people curious. So what drove the big increase of tourism to Japan? A lot of it actually had to do with comics and manga. What will drive the forthcoming big increase in tourism to Korea? I think it's going to be K-pop and movies and television shows and whatever else you all come up with, plus people realizing more how special and interesting and unique Korean food is. I think also your city, Busan, which I visited some number of years ago, it struck me as probably the most beautiful city in all of Asia. And I think I've been around to almost every major part of Asia. Really a stunning location, at least as attractive as Vancouver, probably better, arguably more attractive than the nice parts of Singapore. But people on the outside don't really know they should go to Busan and how lovely it looks. They don't know about the film festival. They don't know about the quality of the food. The weather can be just gorgeous. The walks along the water, incredible. And it seems to me this is still undermarketed. So longer term, I am very bullish about tourism for Korea. I think you have some great natural assets. There are things you could do better. More focality, what exactly are you visiting? Assign a bigger role to Korean popular culture, food, and tell more people about the beauty of Busan. So overall, that's how I see the tourist landscape. Yes, it will recover. It will be quite different. People might visit the countryside more, but for Korea in particular, there is really a lot to look forward to.
네, 기조 강연 함께 하셨습니다.
Thank you very much for the keynote speech. So he has talked about the whole change before and after COVID, and then how we could develop in the city when it comes to the tourism. And he also recommended some advices for both of Korea, Seoul, and Busan. So thank you very much for the insightful presentation.
자, 이제 본격적인 포럼 순서로 들어가
Now
보도록
we'd like to
하겠습니다.
start the
네, 글로벌
forum.
컨설팅 기업 커니가
First of
전
all,
세계 151개
Kearney, the
도시를
global
대상으로 한
consulting
2020
company,
글로벌 도시 보고서에 따르면
has published the 2020 Global City Report for 151 cities across the world. In that report, Seoul's Global City Index fell down from number 10 to number 17 by 7 positions
2021 서울 도시
compared
경쟁력
to
글로벌 포럼
2010. And how can we restore the status of Seoul and improve the city competitiveness? We'd like to show you a video clip of enhancing the city's competitiveness.
경쟁력 있는 도시에 산다. 토대가 되는 것은 경제적 기반, 시장이 넓어지는 그 기반 위에 매력적인 문화 콘텐츠와 삶의 질이 장착이 되고 거기서 시민들이 도시 경쟁력을 느끼지 않나. 도시 경쟁력은 다양하게 정의할 수가 있는데요. 제가 개인적으로 생각하는 도시 경쟁력은 경쟁자들이 대체하기 어려운 우월한 역량이라고 저는 생각하고 있습니다. 좀 더 이제 쉽게 풀어서 말씀을 드리면 경쟁력 있는 도시에 산다. 그런 도시에서 많은 돈을 벌 수 있고 또 경제적 기회가 많고 또 그걸 기반으로 해서 높은 수준의 삶을 누릴 수 있는 그런 곳이 아닌가. 이제 두 가지 측면을 생각할 수 있습니다. 하나는 이제 경제적 측면이 있겠고요. 두 번째는 높은 삶의 질을 누리는 그런 삶의 질에 관련된 요소들이 많다고 봅니다. 그래서 경제적 측면은 소득 기반을 위해서 기업하기 좋은 환경, 그죠? 그리고 그 도시에 많은 우수한 인력들이 생성되고 유입되는 그런 것, 그 다음에 그걸 뒷받침하는 유연하고 수요자 마인드의 행정, 이런 것을 생각할 수 있겠고요. 또 한편으로 삶의 질이라고 하는 것은 다양한 문화 콘텐츠, 뭐 고유한 문화 이런 걸 체험할 수 있는 곳, 그리고 깨끗하고 안전한 환경, 그런 것들을 우리가 생각할 수 있다고 봅니다. 근데 이제 도시에서 경제적 기회가 없거나 소득 기반이 없으면은 누리는 측면이 제대로 작동할 수 없다고 봅니다. 그래서 우선 토대가 되는 것은 경제적 기반, 다시 해서 소득이 창출되고 생산 활동이 활발하고 이런 혁신이 이루어져서 점점 성장하고 많은 시장이 넓어지는 그 기반 위에 사실은 매력적인 문화 콘텐츠와 삶의 질이 장착이 되고 시민들이 도시 경쟁력을 느끼지 않나. 지난 10년간 우리 서울의 도시 경쟁력 지수가 국제기관에서 이렇게 평가한 바로는 많이 떨어졌습니다. 왜 이렇게 떨어졌느냐를 생각해 보면 우리가 물질적으로는 그래도 풍요한 편인데 우리 서울을 정의하는 서울에 대한 문화 콘텐츠가 상대적으로 다른 경쟁 도시보다는 좀 약하지 않았느냐 이렇게 생각합니다. 서울 비전 2030이라는 위원회를 만들었는데요. 거기에 이제 위원님들이 여러 분 참여하셨는데 머리를 맞대고 몇 가지 이제 정책 목표와 과제를 선정했습니다. 첫 번째는 아시아 경제 허브 도시라고 생각하는데요. 우리나라가 사실 아시아에서 굉장히 중심적인 역할을 할 수 있고 그런 측면에서 글로벌 인재와 글로벌 기업이 다 유입되는 그런 도시가 됐으면 좋겠다. 이런 첫 번째 목표를 세웠고요. 두 번째는 일자리를 창출하는 창업 성장 도시로서 우리가 발돋움했으면 좋겠다. 많은 젊은이들이 지금 창업에 몸을 담고 있는데 그걸 통해서 기업이 성장하는 프로그램을 우리가 만들어서 이 서울이 그걸 도와줘서 일자리를 많이 창출하는 그런 도시가 됐으면 좋겠다. 그 다음에 세 번째는요, 혁신산업 리딩 도시인데요. 좀 어렵습니다만, 지금 4차 산업혁명에 상당히 우리가 앞서 나가고 있기 때문에 기술들을 많이 지원을 해서 우리가 혁신을 리딩하는 그런 도시가 됐으면 좋겠다. 마지막으로는 경제적 기반 위에 문화 콘텐츠를 더해서 관광과 축제가 많이 활성화되는 그런 관광 감성 도시가 됐으면 좋겠다. 이렇게 생각했습니다. 우리가 잘할 수 있는 거, 서울시가 잘할 수 있는 잠재력이 무엇이냐를 생각해 봤을 때 서울시와 서울시 시민들의 역량과 잠재력을 생각해 봤습니다. 예를 들어서 우수한 인력, 개방성, 유연성, 혁신 수용성 이런 것들이 우리 서울시가 굉장히 자랑할 만한 잠재력이 아닌가 이런 생각을 했고요. 활력과 매력 측면에서는 예를 들어서 금융 중심지를 유치한다든지 아니면 창업을 훨씬 활성화시킨다든지 아니면 서울시의 고유한 스토리가 담겨있는 문화 콘텐츠를 더하면 어떨까 이런 기준에서 우리가 좀 생각을 해봤습니다. 외국 사람들이 바라보는 서울이 있고요. 우리가 자랑하고 싶은 서울의 문화가 있는데 그게 일치하느냐 안 하느냐 이런 고민이 필요한 것 같아요. 우리가 사실은 보여주려고 해도 사실 외국에서는 그게 보고 싶은 게 아닐 수도 있거든요. 그래서 외국에서 바라보는 서울, 또 외국에서 바라보는 우리 서울시 문화가 무엇인가를 좀 파악을 하고 그걸 수용해서 우리가 서울시만의 독특한 스토리를 만들어서 문화 콘텐츠로 발전시키면 어떨까 이런 생각을 했습니다. 제가 이제 경제학자로서 그 경제적 기반이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각합니다. 서울시 시민 중에 상당히 젊은이들도 많고요. 일자리도 부족하기 때문에 그걸 활성화시키는 노력이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각하고 그런 측면에서는 그 경제 허브 도시 중에서 아시아 금융 허브라는 이제 핵심 과제를 우리가 뽑은 게 있습니다. 여의도를 중심으로 한 금융 허브. 두 번째는 글로벌 유니콘이라고 하는 것은 기업이 급속도로 성장하는 것을 얘기합니다. 유니콘 기업을 만드는 프로그램을 우리가 잘 지원을 해서 서울에 많은 일자리가 창출되는 것을 저는 기대하고 있습니다. 희망적인 생각을 가지고 있습니다. 그때쯤 되면 우리 서울 시민이 창의를 마음껏 발휘하고 그 꿈을 이룰 수 있다는 기대감이 있을 것이고요. 그걸 기반으로 해서 소득이 많이 창출되는 돈을 많이 벌 수 있는 그다음에 기회가 많은 서울 또 풍요로운 삶을 누릴 수 있는 서울을 저는 이제 꿈꿔봅니다.
네, 서울비전 2030 글로벌 도시 경쟁력
Seoul Vision
분과위원장 계신 서강대교
2030.
박정수 교수님의
Professor
말씀
Park Jong-soo is the chair of the subcommittee on Seoul Vision 2030 Global City Competitiveness. Through him, we learned about what city competitiveness means and what we can do better to reinforce the city competitiveness of Seoul.
이어지는 발표에 좋은 화두가 될 것 같습니다.
That was a very good food for thought for our sessions today. Then we'd like to listen to the presentations from the overseas renowned presenters. We have invited 3 overseas renowned presenters. The first presenter is
국가 경쟁력 센터장이신
the Director
아르투로
of World
브리스님입니다.
Competitiveness Center,
변화하는 도시, 변화하는 도시
IMD,
경쟁력이라는
Mr.
주제로 강연을
Mr.
해주시겠습니다.
Arturo Brice will make a presentation on changing cities, the competitiveness of changing cities.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arturo Briz, Professor of Finance at IMD and Director of the IMD World Competitiveness Center. It is a real pleasure and an honor to participate with you in this conference, very interested in the topic and willing to contribute with the knowledge that the IMD World Competitiveness Center, the research center that I direct since 2014, has been doing with regards to smart cities, and particularly studying the city of Seoul and some other South Korean cities. We have been working on the concept of smart cities already for 3 years. And in that context, we have published 3 rankings and 2 books related to the topic. And I want to share with you our perspective about the smartness of a city. For a long time, it has been understood that smartness is related to technology and also to sustainability. For us, for our research center, a smart city is not just a sustainable city. Smartness comes from the interaction of 3 different aspects. The first aspect is the competitiveness of the city itself, which at the end of the day is basically deriving from the competitiveness of the country. The second dimension of smartness is the urban development itself, which refers essentially to the characteristics of the city in terms of sanitation, quality of life, availability of resources, public transportation, mobility, and so on and so forth. And finally, in the third dimension, is technology. Technology has been for many years the focus of the Smart City program, but technology is not all. And we realize that before 2010, 2015, in the old days of the Smart City programs, the focus was on technology. For us, there is the optimal combination between competitiveness, urban development, and technology that results in a smart city per se. Within each of these factors, obviously, we have different characteristics of the city. For example, the city competitiveness requires that there is job creation, safety, good governance, inclusivity, sustainability, rule of law, for instance. With regard to urban development, it is necessary to have the right infrastructure and waste management, for example. Those levels of development that increase the citizens' prosperity. And finally, when it comes to technology, then obviously we are talking about smart cameras, about smart traffic management, smart pollution management, and all of the technology that have been applied recently to smart cities. In that sense, then, the question is, what determines the right view of smartness or of a smart city? If you think of the 3 factors that I have highlighted earlier, the question is, when we measure how smart a city is, shall we focus on the inputs? That is, shall we look at how much the city is investing, the quality of the technology, the number of cameras, systems, regulations, plans? Or shall we instead focus on the output? That is, to what extent such a technology results in quality of life, prosperity, crime reduction, inclusiveness, jobs, happiness, and so on. So inputs and outputs combine optimally. If you don't have inputs, the city is not smart. But if that technology, these inputs, do not result in quality of life, prosperity, and so on, then the technology is completely useless. That's why, in our perspective, we need to look at both. Of course, looking at both imposes a problem of measurement, because I can measure how much a city is investing in technology. I can measure how many good regulations and plans have they been made. But it's extremely difficult to measure quality of life, inclusiveness, or happiness of the citizens. We need to rely on much more subjective measures in order to come up with a good metric. At the end of the day, and here it comes to our definition of smartness, we need to be able to assess to what extent all the smart interventions in a city aim to improve the quality of life and the prosperity of the city residents. We embarked in this task already 5 years ago, and I'm happy to share with you the 2021 Smart City ranking that the IMD World Competitiveness Center has just published. This intervention being recorded before the ranking is presented still allows me to share it with you, because you will see my presentation right after the ranking has been published. And let me show it to you. The Smart City ranking that IMD has been publishing includes 119 cities around the world. We have chosen cities based on importance, obviously, city capitals, but also on their emergence in the smart city world. And we have included cities like Medellin in Colombia and Medina in Saudi Arabia. What you have in this slide is the ranking corresponding to the top 58 cities. For each of the cities, we consider two aspects of smartness, as I have mentioned. The first one is what we call structure. Structure refers to the improvements in prosperity and quality of life for citizens as perceived by a survey that we have conducted among 120 residents in each of the cities considered. Questions pertain to what extent citizens perceive that their quality of life has improved subsequent to the implementation of the technology. The second factor is the technology itself. An objective look at how every city implements different technologies that aim to improve such quality of life. For each of these two factors, we have provided a rating using the terminology that is traditionally used by rating agencies in terms of AAA, AA, single A, and so on and so forth. We translate this rating into a ranking, and then we can see both the Smart City rank for 2021 in the very left column of these tables, as well as the Smart City rating, AAA, AA, and so on. Notice also that because we care about the competitiveness of the city as well, we calibrate those metrics using the Human Development Index for the country where the city is. So, for example, in the case of Seoul, we will look at the Human Development Index for South Korea and then put South Korea in a particular bucket, in this case in the bucket of the most developed economies. And this means that certain economies, for example, economies in China, cities in China, they cannot belong to the top cities because of their Human Development Index. Essentially, we create subgroups of cities depending on the competitiveness of the country. And only when the country is competitive enough can the city be on the top of the ranking. As you can see, the table shows improvements and declines in the ranking with respect to the previous one that happened 2 years ago. And let me highlight now the two South Korean cities that we consider. The first one is obviously Seoul, that ranks among the top 15 most smart cities in the world, with an impressive improvement of 34 positions relative to the previous ranking. And what you can see that has a rating of B when it comes to structures and A when it comes to technologies. Our conclusion can be, in principle, and I will give you more details in a second, that while technologies are top class, still citizens do not perceive their full benefits. It is still a top city, but more job needs to be done in order for citizens to realize what the possibilities of technology are going to be. The second city that we consider in South Korea is Busan. And as you can see, Busan ranks number 37, also with a significant improvement of 9 positions relative to the previous year. In the case of Busan, we find the opposite interpretation. That is, while Busan's quality of life seems to be high for citizens, the technology is not good enough, or at least as good as, for example, in Seoul. I'm not saying that is the bad technology, but obviously a rating of BBB puts the city in the top half, but still with certain room for improvement. It is worth mentioning, if you look at the top 5 cities, that Singapore, Zurich, Oslo, Taipei, and Lausanne, they represent very well the traditional or the typical city that excels. First of all, these 5 cities are small or middle in size. 3 of them are European, Zurich, Oslo, Lausanne. 2 of them are in Asia, Singapore and Taipei. In the 5 cities, the competitiveness of the country is extremely high. And that is like necessary conditions for the city to be smart. Once there are certain economic conditions, then obviously technology tends to make the difference. The next slide shows the bottom 59 economies. And you can see the usual suspects, except that I would like to mention here that, as you can see, the Chinese cities like Shanghai, Nanjing, Shenzhen, and so on, they occupy positions starting in number 63. And this is because the point that I made earlier. For a city to be smart, you need the country to be competitive. And even though Chinese cities have made impressive progress in the quality of their technology, they are not smart. Let me also mention that because we care about in citizens' perspectives and opinions, the fact that Chinese cities have amazing technology doesn't mean that citizens may see that as a benefit. And sometimes our survey shows that they see it much more as a problem because of the country and government control over their private lives. The bottom cities also include many Latin American, some Asian, and other European cities that are, for example, strikingly low on smartness. Look at, for example, number 112, Rome, a very well-developed European city, but a city where citizens perceive all of the problems coming together. So, what have we learned in our approach? What we have learned from our ranking is that technology must have a purpose. This purpose may be to increase the prosperity of the citizens, that cities approach smartness in very different ways to solve the problems that citizens have. So such problems can be, for example, traffic in Paris, pollution in Moscow, or security and safety in Medina and Medellin. Finally, we find that mid-cities are best. And they are best because the benefits of technology can be much better perceived by the citizens of the city. That's very important because the size of the city also makes sometimes very difficult for technology to be extended to all of the citizens in a fair and inclusive way. Hoping that this is useful, let me finally give you our particular perspective in detail about the city of Seoul. One aspect that I want to mention about our ranking is that it's completely public. So if you are interested in our results, you can always look at them in our website, where you will find an extensive report on all of the cities that I have mentioned. But in the case of Seoul, I want to mention a couple of things. As you can see from the slide that you have in front of you, we look at the priority areas in our ranking, meaning what are the points of interest that city officials must attack. For Seoul, we identify 3. The first one is air pollution. Air pollution seems to be a problem identified by citizens, and technology needs to give a response to that. The second problem is road congestion, traffic. This is not very different from many other cities. The third problem is corruption. If you look at the detailed indicators for Seoul, you can actually identify that in these three aspects, citizens rank the city extremely low. That, I think, qualifies the point that I made earlier, that while the city of Seoul shows massive improvements in technology in the last years, citizens do not perceive their benefits. So until we attack these three problems of air pollution, traffic congestion, and corruption, then the city will not make it to the top 5, which at the end of the day should be the objective of any city official. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. He shared with us the IMD Smart City Index that evaluates the city's competitiveness to use technologies to promote prosperity of citizens. And thank you for your insight into the status of Seoul and possible solutions to the urban issues.
Now we'll move on to the second presentation. So we are going to invite Mr. Al-Habru Labdo, who is the CEO of Kearney, and he is going to talk about the Kearney presentation because that is the Global Cities Index that is introduced every year. So now let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
First, I want to thank the Seoul Metropolitan Government for organizing this important forum. It is a pleasure to be speaking to you today. We will be discussing in this presentation an important topic for cities in general and Seoul in particular, global city competitiveness. Before we start, it's important that we first define what is a global city. A truly global city is one that has three main characteristics. 1. The ability to attract and retain global capital, people, and ideas. 2. The capability to sustain this performance in the long term. And 3. The capacity to create and maintain significant connectivity with the rest of the world. Together, these features contribute to the creation of a vibrant ecosystem where individuals, businesses, and communities can thrive by leveraging global resources to serve the local context. An important tool to measure how globally engaged cities are is Kearney's Global Cities Index. The index provides a unique perspective on the influence cities have today and highlights their areas of competitiveness and differences. The index also serves as a guide for city leaders and governments on how to improve competitiveness and attractiveness by leveraging and reinforcing a city's global connections. The Global Cities Index was established in 2008 and is one of the first city-level competitiveness indices. It was designed with input from top academic and business advisors, is entirely based on facts and publicly available data, and is highly regarded for its holistic assessment of cities' capabilities. The index quantifies the global competitiveness of cities across 5 dimensions that are crucial for the success of a global city. Business activity, by measuring a city's ability to attract a variety of global business activities. Human capital, by measuring the extent to which a city is considered attractive for diverse groups of people and talent. Information exchange, by measuring the ease of flow of global information and ideas to and from the city. Cultural experience, by measuring the diversity of cultural attractions, targeting international residents and visitors. And political engagement, by measuring the level of influence a city has in driving global policy making and dialogue. The Global Cities Index has maintained the same methodology and metrics for 12 years. However, in 2020, 2 new metrics were introduced to reflect some of the key changing global dynamics. In fact, we can no longer consider a city global if it is not at the forefront of entrepreneurship and innovation. To reflect this, a new metric, Unicorn Companies, was introduced to measure the attractiveness of a city and its ability to generate global entrepreneurs and startups. In addition, as the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us, the well-being of residents and the access to cutting-edge medical knowledge and technologies can make or break a city. To account for this, another metric, medical universities, was included to measure the ability of a city to develop and attract the best global medical talent. As global dynamics and factors of city competitiveness continue to evolve with time, the Global Cities Index methodology will also adapt. Keeping in mind that it is important for any global index to maintain a relative stability over time to allow for performance comparisons over the years. This is very important as it provides guidance to city leaders and local governments on the effectiveness of their policy making and its impact on city competitiveness. A frequent question from many city leaders in relation to the index is, what dimension is the most important to improve a city's competitiveness? The answer to this is all dimensions. To be a global city, it is necessary to have a leading performance across all areas of the index. But over the years, index data has showed that one dimension, human capital, stands out as a key predictor of future success. Cities that showed improvement on the human capital front saw in subsequent years a jump in many other dimensions. Retaining and attracting a diversity of people and talent is an area that all cities looking to improve their global competitiveness should prioritize, especially given this is a prerequisite to attract international corporations, develop a globally competitive startup ecosystem, and secure foreign investments. Today, improving global competitiveness has become even more challenging for cities. Since 2020, the world has been living one of the most disruptive global emergencies in history. The crisis has changed the entire operating environment to a degree previously unimaginable, and its impact has been particularly severe in cities. Several existing trends were accelerated, creating strain on cities, from growing fiscal pressure and economic inequality to increasing deglobalization and environmental disruptions. Our 2021 index results show that the most globally connected cities were also the most vulnerable to COVID-19 impacts. This shouldn't come as a surprise for two main reasons. One, these urban centers were amongst the first to register coronavirus cases outside of the epicenter, given the number of international travel links they have. As a result, policymakers and medical professionals in these cities were up against a fast-moving virus with limited understanding of the public health implications and no evidence of historically effective policies. Two, the most global cities are those that have more and depend on more international connections, from trade routes to international migration. As the measures implemented to counter the pandemic closed borders and paralyzed movement between cities, these hubs had more to lose. The impacts were clear in the index results as the decline in connectivity was observed across all aspects from economic activity to social interactions. And cities with a relatively heavier weight towards the physical dimensions, such as international visitors, global trade volumes, and public events, suffered the most. As a result, throughout the pandemic, cities have faced a fundamental trade-off: how to balance reopening for economic reasons versus remaining closed to reduce the exposure to risk. National and local decisions have created divergent realities for cities around the world. If we take an example, Australia took a decision to isolate itself from the rest of the world by shutting its borders. Leveraging its geographic isolation and strict lockdowns, the country was able to create a semblance of normalcy. This was reflected in the index results that measure cultural experience both in Melbourne and Sydney. In another example, Dubai reopened to international travelers relatively early, with the support of strict testing requirements, contact tracing, and the rapid rollout of vaccines. While the number of COVID-19 cases in Dubai has been higher than that of neighboring cities, it experienced better economic performance, and this was also reflected in its improvement across the index dimensions. If we take a look at the 2021 index rankings, we see that the 4 leading cities remain the same for the 5th year in a row. New York, London, Paris, and Tokyo once again demonstrated their resilience even in the face of the global pandemic. From there, however, similarities to previous years' results are limited, as different conditions push cities both up and down across the ranks. One interesting outcome in this year's results is the impact on rankings seen from the digital economy and technology growth during the pandemic. 2021 saw an incredible 246 new companies joining the club of unicorns by June alone, more than the number of new unicorns from 2019 and 2020 combined. If we deep dive into Seoul City's performance in the index, we can see that the city has maintained a high rank for many years, a strong testament to its global competitiveness and positioning among the leaders shaping the future. The city's rank has been historically strong, in particular in two dimensions: business activity, where the city ranked 9th for the past several years, and cultural experience, where the city ranked amongst or very close to the top 10. In 2020, however, the city witnessed a 4-rank drop in the index compared to 2019, despite maintaining the strong performance in business activity and improving on both human capital and political engagement. This drop was driven by a fall in cultural experience. Given Seoul's proximity to the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak, the city was one of the first to be impacted. Strong measures were implemented to control the outbreak, and the response has been endorsed by the global community for its agile, effective, and transparent approach. In support of the Triple P strategy of testing, tracing, and treatment, the local government of Seoul also took comprehensive measures to ensure emergency quarantine and, very importantly, communication with residents. The extensive engagement with the society on mitigation strategies was successful in avoiding a lockdown, thereby reducing the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic, which is clear in the rankings of both business activity and human capital. However, cultural experience was severely impacted during 2020 and the first half of 2021 as a result of the social distancing measures leading to restrictions on concerts, sporting events, and other cultural experiences. Despite the negative short-term impact of the pandemic, Seoul has a historic opportunity to lead the recovery in a transformed world. To realize this opportunity and challenge the established global city leaders, the city must proactively address 5 strategic imperatives. The first imperative is to win the competition for talent. Human capital is the driving force behind the city's economic activity and competitiveness. As the urban studies expert Richard Florida puts it, what drives innovation and startup entrepreneurship is not the density of jobs, but the density of talent. The second imperative is to embrace the rapidly growing digital economy. An undisputed permanent change brought on by the pandemic has been the explosion of the digital economy. While many cities consider this as a threat, the winners will be those that recognize it as a tool to accelerate economic growth. The third imperative is to ensure economic resilience by balancing global and local resources. The pandemic has highlighted the fragility of our global economy as cross-border trade has faced severe disruptions. While this may point towards the benefits of a strategy based on localization, cities must also consider the risks of such a strategy. Global connectivity in trade is a cornerstone of the historical economic success of cities and will remain so in the future. The fourth imperative is to adapt in the face of climate change. The climate change issue is twofold for cities. First, cities are physically, economically, and socially vulnerable to the ravages of climate disasters. Second, cities must rethink the ways in which they themselves contribute to climate change. Despite the global efforts to limit its magnitude, climate change is inevitable. As such, cities must take on a range of actions to protect themselves from risks such as hotter temperatures, rising sea levels, intense rainfall and flooding, and more frequent droughts. A fifth imperative is to invest in individual and community well-being. It is no exaggeration to say we are in a state of crisis with respect to human well-being due to pandemic effects on mental health. If we consider once again that the driving force of a city's economic activity is its human capital, then an essential requirement for the success of cities is prioritizing quality of life. With these imperatives in mind, Seoul can take a pioneering role in creating the next generation of urban living centered on well-being and oriented by resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So he has explained about the important imperatives of the GCI as well as the changes that we see after the COVID-19. And he also suggested good recommendations to improve global competitiveness of Seoul. I hope you're having a very useful time. And now let's move on to the panel discussion.
2011부터 서울국제경제자문단의 위원으로
So the next
활동하시면서 서울의
presenter
꾸준한
has been
관심과 도움을
serving
주고
as a
계시는
member
분인데요.
of
미국의
Seoul
유명
International
미디어기업
Business
포브스사의
Advisory
부회장이신
Council
크리스토퍼
and
포브스님의
is also
발표가
serving as the vice
준비되어
president
있습니다. 지난
of
30여 년간 서울의
Forbes.
발전성을 지켜보면서
For the
느낀
last
점에
30
대해서
years,
말씀을 해주신다고
he has
하는데요.
observed the
앞으로가 더
growth and
기대되는 도시
development
서울,
of Seoul.
지금부터 함께 들어보겠습니다.
Let us listen to his presentation.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and greetings to all. I am delighted to be participating remotely in the Seoul Global City Competitive Forum 2021. The presentations thus far have been fascinating, and the speakers have certainly set a high bar for me to follow, but I will do my best. My relationship with Seoul stretches back just over 4 decades. Over this time, I've seen firsthand as Seoul has gone through some breathtaking transformations. 40 years ago, things were very different. There were very few private cars, little green taxis, and much more smog. Let me put this into a global context. As vice chairman of Forbes, over the years, I've had the opportunity to visit numerous cities around the globe. That has given me the ability to personally compare Seoul and its incredible evolution with other fascinating cities worldwide. Therefore, I can say with confidence that Seoul has long impressed me with its truly remarkable changes. Today, Seoul can be called, without exaggeration, a truly world-class city, comparable to any of the iconic metropolises around the globe. Seoul is home to some iconic buildings now, such as the Lotte World Tower. It has world-class museums. A particular favorite of mine is the Liam, or the Samsung Museum of Art. I try to make time to visit it on all my visits to Seoul because it has the most incredibly diverse and fascinating collection. There is also the renowned Gangnam. I apologize, my daughter always said I read terribly. The renowned Gangnam district. It is famous for its shopping, restaurants, and bars. It is so popular that I gather it's now being called the Beverly Hills of Seoul. Seoul can definitely hold its own with other major urban centers such as New York or London. Seoul is not only just the seat of South Korea's government, it is also the home to some of the world's most prominent companies such as Samsung, LG, and Hyundai. What's also impressive are the younger entrepreneurial companies that have started up. Many of these are also headquartered in Seoul. There are companies like Kakao or Nexon or Coupang. There is certainly a robust ecosystem in place for these companies to thrive. As a longtime supporter of Seoul, I would love to see this city have an even bigger global profile. And while obviously I'm biased, one way to do this would be to bring the Forbes Global CEO Conference, annual CEO Conference, to Seoul. This event, as some of you know, convenes several hundred of the world's top CEOs, entrepreneurs, and investors. We have held the conference in years past in global cities like Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, Shanghai, and Dubai. Having said that it has never been held in Seoul, I personally would be delighted to have that happen while I'm still involved here at Forbes as vice chairman. Likewise, with the global phenomenon of K-pop, K-culture, those truly remarkable assets that Seoul can bank on, millions of fans around the world love the boy band BTS. In fact, they were one of the standout listees on our Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 list back in 2018. It would be an historic event if the Asian 30 Under 30 event could be held here in Seoul. It would create much buzz across the young, talented community of the Asia-Pacific region. There would no doubt be jump at the chance to visit the epicenter of K-culture, the K-culture phenomenon. And I'm sure Seoul would do an amazing job as the host of this event, and Seoul will get plenty of positive social media coverage out of it. Unfortunately, we have not been able to hold live events in recent years due to the pandemic. However, the pandemic, as tough as it has been on all of us, now seems to be receding. So perhaps it would be a good time to turn our attention to what Seoul should be doing to prepare itself as the world returns to normal. Seoul can and should try to find ways to upgrade itself beyond what is already the remarkable strides that has already remained. To remain a world-class city requires focus and constant innovation. Stakeholders like public and private sectors should work together towards common goals. The Seoul metropolitan government should find new and better ways to attract more overseas investment. Getting more of this investment is one of the best ways to help and improve a city on many levels. Another proposal is for the MICE companies in Seoul to find ways to strengthen their own competitiveness. Other cities are raising the bar in their MICE offerings. Seoul should look for the best practices to make sure that it does not fall behind. Seoul has all the right ingredients. It has great infrastructure, such as airports, conference spaces, and marvelous hotels. The service levels at these places is superb. I also enjoy the wonderful service I receive every time in Seoul when I come. So I'm hoping, as I'm sure you all are, that global travel will continue to make a comeback. It cannot happen too soon. Many international flights have been reopened in recent months. Physical events and meetings are beginning to start again, and I think MICE facilities in Seoul should prepare themselves for the rebound. There is plenty of pent-up demand for the people who want to be able to travel freely again. So when MICE businesses do start up again, I strongly suspect that it may return at a faster pace than many were expecting. Thus, I'd recommend that Seoul needs to start getting itself ready now. To me, I think the phrase quality of life is an important part of the equation. If Seoul can provide a good quality of life that supports the city to be more competitive, it doesn't matter if the competition is for investment or MICE. My feeling is that if Seoul is a good place to work, live, and play, it naturally will be a place that attracts investors. It will also attract visitors to MICE events here too as well. In fact, the vibrant economy that Seoul has made us realize was deserving in its lone local edition of Forbes. We now are proud to have Junang Ilbo as our partner for Forbes Korea. Naturally, the magazine is based here in Seoul. We are absolutely delighted with Forbes Korea. It has been one of our great successful international editions. I truly believe that I believe in Forbes, but I truly believe that Seoul has the will to become a city that can continue to develop itself into an even better city across the board. And it could and should have the focus to lift itself up as an even better destination for global investment and MICE. I have seen Seoul make tremendous improvements over decades. I am confident it will continue to do so in the future. Thank you for your time and your patience with my very inadequate reading skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 고맙습니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christopher, for your presentation. For the last 30 years, Seoul has experienced rapid changes and is now developing into a world-class city. He mentioned the importance of overseas investment and the growth of MICE industries. He gave us the compliments along with advice for the future of Seoul City. With this, we listened to the presentations from 3 overseas presenters. The pandemic has brought about rapid changes, so we learned about how to respond to such changes and improve the city competitiveness, and we had a look at the possible future of Seoul along with its potential. Before we move on to the next session, I would like to show you a video clip. The video clip is about Seoul's vision and ambitious goals to become one of the global top 5 cities by 2030. It shows a blueprint for the future of Seoul.
이어서 이
So
곡의
we will
후반에
show you
조에서
the Seoul
1억 뷰를
Vision
달성하는
2030
놀라운
video
신기록을
clip.
세운
And
영상입니다.
I will show you
여러분
another video
예상하셨겠지만
clip
지난
that
2017년부터 서울시
received
홍보대사를
100 million
맡아서
views
전 세계인들에게 서울의
in 9
아름다움을
days from
알리는 데
the
힘써온
release.
BTS가
As you
출연을
may
합니다.
know,
코로나
BTS
팬데믹
appears
중에도
in that
끊임없이
video.
발전하고
BTS
변화하는
has
서울의
been the
희망을
ambassador of
전하는
Seoul,
영상.
delivering the
어기영차
beauty
서울
of Seoul
BTS도
to citizens
함께
across
이어서
the world.
감상하시겠습니다.
So let us have a look at those video clips.
별벌 영 FC니였어 꼭 플러스 별이 서울 Safety in daily life KC mind Resilience soul With innovation enjoy development Future vibe soul Soaring to the world 같은 technology for 2 millennium year Global leading soul Stand up for international city Fair city soul
서울은 계속된다. 가장 서울답게. Your Seoul goes on.
Seoul goes on. So have you enjoyed the dynamic video showing the attractiveness of Seoul with BTS? Next, we're going to start the special dialogue. In the first session, we listened to the presentations from the overseas speakers, and the 3 Korean scholars and the 2 overseas presenters will have a special dialogue on the competitiveness of Seoul. I would like to introduce the participants of the special dialogue. First of all, Mr. Han-jun, the professor, who is going to serve as the moderator. Professor Han-jun has been researching and studying the areas of quality of life and social inequality, and he is now professor at the Department of Sociology at Yonsei University. We have 2 panelists, Professor Park Jung-soo from the Department of Economy at Seogang University. He is the representative scholar in Korea in the area of economic growth, development, and innovation. Thank you for your participation. We also have Professor Shin-in Chul from University of Seoul. Professor Shin-in Chul has been researching urban sociology. Now, let us have a look at the strengths and weaknesses and competitiveness of Seoul from the perspectives of home and abroad. Let us start the special dialogue.
Hello, everyone. I'm the moderator, Professor Han-jun. We have listened to 3 interesting presentations, and then they were really insightful and informative. We could learn a lot, And then regarding 3 presentations, I have invited 2 professors from Korea to talk about how to improve the Seoul's global city competitiveness. The title of today's forum and this session is the city competitiveness that we can raise. So I'd like to ask 2 professors, and I'd like to ask questions to the 2 professors about the 3 presentations and then listen to their remarks. First of all, I want to ask a question about Mr. Arturo Brice of the IMD.
So the first question goes to the first presenter, Mr. Arturo Brice. When we look at the Smart City Index published by IND, we see that the ranking of Seoul has moved up by 34 letters. In your presentation material, that was one of the biggest changes I see in the ranking of Seoul. So, what do you think are the reasons that helped Seoul increase its ranking in the Smart City Index?
IMD Smart City ranking, Seoul improves by 34 positions. And the reason for such an improvement are obviously the focus of the city on a particular set of areas. We have already discussed how the city ranks still low on housing and mobility, but a lot of effort has been made in these 2 areas. And clearly, there is a perception by the citizens that even though there is still a problem, there is a lot that has been done. You have to also take into account that the improvement for Seoul is one of the most important in all of the cities that we study in this year's ranking. So I think it's worth mentioning that citizens, they understand the improvement in the policies that have been implemented.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your answer. We hope that Seoul's competitiveness will continue to improve for the future. The competitiveness ranking of Korea has been improved, and at the same time, in terms of the IMD ranking, what is interesting is that Singapore is ranked the top 1st city, Taipei is ranked the 4th. As such, cities in Asia have been performing very well in the Smart City Index. And what do you think we can learn from Singapore or Taipei to improve our competitiveness? What kind of elements do you think we can benchmark from the cities of Singapore and Taipei?
With respect of the question regarding how and what can Seoul learn from cities like Singapore or Taipei, it is important to realize that both Taipei and Singapore are cities that are particularly focused on the well-being of their citizens by improving availability of housing, by improving the use of technology in city management, and by allowing mobility solutions within the city that are pioneer in the world, and also areas where those cities are leaders. And for example, car sharing, smart parking, smart city cameras. And I think that's also where Seoul, which is also a big city, can learn from them.
네.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Now, I want to ask a question to our second presenter, Mr. Al-Habru Abdo from Kearney. So from your presentation, we could see the 5 standards that you are based on to analyze the city competitiveness. And in the case of human capital, Seoul's ranking was relatively lower, and your recommendation on winning the competition for talent is well taken. And you said we have to promote this more to attract more global talents. But when we attract the global talent and let them live and work in Seoul, what can Seoul do to be more attractive for global talent? What can we do better to be more attractive for them to live and work in Seoul?
Well, the newly announced Seoul Vision 2030 has put great emphasis on people, with one of its 4 policy dimensions focused on guaranteeing fair competition and opportunities by restoring the mobility ladder. This is very important and can be complemented with steps aimed at attracting and retaining a diverse pool of global talent. Today, Seoul is catching up, but is still behind the top global cities in terms of attractiveness for expats. Despite the increase in migration in the past decade, the share of highly qualified expats relative to the highly qualified Koreans remains lower than top cities. There are many areas the city can target to continue and expand the attractiveness to global talent. First, influence national immigration policy to simplify the current framework for the migration of skilled workers in Korea, as this is a prerequisite for the success of all other efforts. The city can also work on encouraging more international collaborations between high-skilled Koreans and global talent abroad in different areas like research and development, innovation, and others. This will help accelerate the cultural change needed to increase the share of expats in the city. The city can also double down on efforts to attract international students to Seoul's universities and support their retention after graduation. The city can also expand its work on immigrant integration, because even though attracting expats is the first hurdle for global cities, an equally important one is to ensure they are happy and want to stay in the long term in the city. Finally, all these efforts will not succeed without building and projecting a brand of an immigrant-friendly city that offers a high quality of life and attractive economic opportunities.
Thank you very much for the answer. And now let's give the last question. When we see the Kearney's global city competitiveness, and Seoul's ranking actually has dropped. So it is time for Seoul to pull up its global competitiveness. So, as you have studied this for a very long time, what do you think is important for Seoul to be more competitive and more attractive among global cities? This is a kind of broad question, but I want to ask you this question.
This is not a simple question. For Seoul to be more competitive, the city needs to stay ahead of top global cities on several dimensions. But I think the city's Vision 2030 puts it in the right path. The vision already addresses many of the imperatives I mentioned to increase global competitiveness. It takes a proactive approach to emerging global and local trends and issues like climate change, residents' well-being, and the startup economy, while at the same time it focuses on the core elements of a city's competitiveness like ease of doing business and infrastructure. Also, and very importantly, the vision was defined following an inclusive approach by involving all parties needed to make it happen, from citizens and businesses to experts and government officials. My humble advice to you is to continue following an inclusive approach, also in the implementation of the vision, because it will be the difference between this staying an ambitious plan or becoming a transformative journey towards a new reality for Seoul and its citizens. And also remain agile and adaptive throughout the implementation period by continuously monitoring global trends and making changes to always stay one step ahead of other global cities, as we currently live in a rapidly changing environment.
네,
Thank you very much for the answer. So we have listened to the answers from the two speakers, especially regarding the Seoul's global city competitiveness. And now we will move on to the domestic insights and perspective to our two panelists.
As the previous presenter mentioned, we've been continuously talking about Vision 2030 for Seoul. And here today, Professor Park Jong-soo was actually in charge of the activities working on Vision 2030 of Seoul. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people have difficulties in terms of the economy. I think that is one of the most urgent issues to be solved in Seoul. And Professor Park, in your opinion, what do you think we need to do to enhance the global competitiveness of Seoul? What do you think is the urgent task we need to do? Thank you for your question. In May this year, the Seoul Vision 2030 subcommittee was created, and I was invited to be a part of that committee. That committee is about to discuss how we can enhance the global competitiveness of Seoul, and we had a lot of discussion with many experts. I would like to share with you what we discussed in that subcommittee on Seoul Vision 2030. So far, Seoul has made remarkable growth, and Seoul has high potential. But in our opinion, in order to ensure global competitiveness, there are something we need to think about. First of all, Seoul needs to have its own economic and financial basis and foundation. I mean, sustainable economic foundation is what is needed for Seoul. First of all, what is the thing Seoul needs to think about? What is something that is unique to Seoul? And what is Seoul City's unique and outstanding element in terms of industries? I personally think that the uniqueness of Seoul is innovation, openness, agility. And based on these characteristics, we can create and grow the relevant industries. For example, there are many talented people in Seoul. We can make a use of those talents and achieve digital innovation and AI-based technical innovation, as well as cultural content development. We need to work on those activities as Seoul. Actually, we have so far pursued quantitative growth. And in Seoul, we need to focus more on innovation, diversity, and openness so that Seoul can become an attractive city with higher standard of living and higher quality of living. So we need to have the optimal combination among talent, technology, the financial resource, and innovation. As mentioned in the previous presentations, Seoul has abundant human resources and technological power. And based on those resources, we need creative enterprises. So it is essential to create an environment where that is business friendly, and we need to create a business environment that fits the global standard, because some businesses have found it difficult to achieve growth due to some regulations. So depending on the case, Seoul needs to soften the regulations so that we can see the creation of a game changer enterprise in Seoul. So I hope that we need to help companies unleash their potential of innovative power. Thank you very much for your comments. Professor Park Jong-soo also emphasized in the opening video that we need to lay out strong economic foundation. which means that we need to achieve innovation, openness, and diversity so that Seoul will become more attractive and competitive city. And at the same time, we need to help companies unleash their full potential. So thank you very much for the insightful comments. In today's presentation, the presenters emphasized the importance of economy as well as the quality of life of the citizens. So I would like to talk about the quality of life of citizens in Seoul. Professor Shin In-chul especially has researched the quality of living of citizens. In 2020, there was a world-renowned report, the UN World Happiness Report. According to this report, Seoul was ranked 83rd in terms of the happiness of the citizens. So that was the first time we compared the level of happiness of citizens among the world cities, and Seoul didn't have much good result in terms of the level of happiness of citizens. Taipei was ranked 47th, and Singapore was also ranked at the similar position. So Asian cities were not ranked high in terms of the citizens' happiness. The same was true for Tokyo and Shanghai. Beijing ranking was about 130th. So the presenters emphasized that for Seoul to have competitiveness, we have to improve the quality of living of our citizens. How do you think we can achieve that? I think it is important to approach this question from the perspective of our Seoul citizens. Professor Shin, how do you think we can achieve better quality of living for the citizens, and what do you think needs to be changed?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this meaningful forum. And just like the previous speakers and Professor Park said, the quality of life and global city competitiveness are closely connected. Just like Charles Cohen highlighted, what we mean by the global city competitiveness is not to boast the Seoul's stance, but to make Seoul citizens proud by knowing that how well environment has been formed in that city. So from that perspective, as you may well know, what I want to talk about today is 2 points. From one point, Seoul citizens and the global perspective towards Seoul City. So from Seoul citizens' perspective, to have such a global city competitiveness, we need to increase the income level and have stable job creation opportunities. Those pending issues are important, but as you saw from the Global City Competitiveness Index, culture was important. But if you see the culture-related index, if you see how involved Seoul citizens are into the cultural activities, just like Mr. Tyler Cohen said, well, it was kind of heartbreaking, but we cannot find the one pinpoint attractiveness of Seoul, the one must-see in Seoul. So he pointed out that, and I think this is closely related to the cultural activities. So we will work 52 hours a week based on the policy really soon, and you are enjoying many different culture more than before. But for the resting time, you just take a rest, so you're using the time in a passive way. But I hope we will be more active to see like sports event or be involved in the cultural activities, but we are not enjoying it fully. And I think this is also closely related to the level of happiness of Seoul citizens. I hope we will have more infrastructure and activities and programs to enjoy. Then I think that will also boost up the global city competitiveness of Seoul. And I want to add one more comment, if I'm allowed. As I have majored the urban sociology. I saw the Kearney's GCI, and they highlight the importance of capital, human capital. And as you may well know, out of 336 universities, like 30% are located in Seoul, and about 150,000 foreign students come to Seoul and Korea to study, and 40% of them are staying in Seoul. So we have attracted many numbers of international students. That is true. However, these talents that we attracted to Seoul and Korea cannot realize what they have learned in our country because there's no such an environment. So they just return to their home country. So that was somewhat unfortunate. So I think attracting talents is important, but I think it is also important to make them stay inside Seoul so that they can use their capabilities after graduating university. So we must cooperate together with the schools and universities in Korea.
Thank you very much for your comments. The Korean culture has become popular across the world. That has raised the status of Korea, and such culture needs to be a part of the daily lives of our citizens. Although the citizens now have more time for leisure activities, they need to have higher quality leisure activities. And we hope that we could have more opportunities to make contribution to the growth and development of Seoul. We have been having this special dialogue focusing on economic foundation and enhancement of the quality of life. Many people living in Korea often use this term word youth and digital. First about youth, I have a question to Professor Park. So things are concentrated to the metropolitan areas in Korea. These days, it seems that many young people are rushing to Seoul. There may be many reasons. One of the reasons will be that the youth are trying to find hope in Seoul. That's why they're rushing to Seoul. So it seems that if Seoul is to give some hope to such young people, what do you think we need to do, Professor Park? As you mentioned, in Seoul, we have a higher proportion of young population. People in their 20s to 30s take up 31% of the entire Seoul population, which is quite a high proportion compared to other cities. And economic activities participation rate is very high among young people in Seoul in their 20s to 30s. So it's true that we have many young people in Seoul, but many young people are saying that we have no hope and it's difficult to find a decent job. So I thought about what we need to do at Seoul City. In order to give hope to our young people, we need to prepare a platform for those young people to unleash their potential and achieve their dream. First of all, our young people have excellent capabilities, so we need to provide them with opportunities to display their capabilities. Young people are different from old generations. Many people in their 20s to 30s want to start up their own business. During the old days, young people try to get a job at a company and get promoted in one company. But these days, young people would like to start up their own business based on their own idea. But the startups often fail to achieve further growth. So we need to help them start up their own business and become a gazelle company which achieves a rapid growth. Also, there's another terminology of unicorn company. Unicorn company is the company that achieves the corporate value of 10 trillion won in 10 years. So we need to establish the foundation for startups and enterprises to become such unicorn company in the future. Seoul City has provided physical, material, or economic support for those young entrepreneurs. And now I think we need to provide, for example, consulting programs or flexible and agile administrative processes for those young startup entrepreneurs. And as Professor Shin mentioned, most of the universities in Seoul are excellent ones. There are not many cities that have good quality universities. So centered around campus town, Seoul City has thought about creating startup valley. So it would be a good idea to create a valley where we can provide startup or incubation support for young people. This idea should not just end with as a plan or idea, but should be effectively materialized into reality. And also, we need to consider the needs of the actual young people. Lastly, we also talked a lot about the importance of human resources. It's interesting that at IMD ranking, our ranking was high in terms of human resources, but at Kearney's report, our ranking was low in terms of the human resources. Seems that IMD considered the educational level of our citizens. And in the case of Kearney report, they might have considered how many talented foreigners come to Seoul and carry out activities. So we think that Seoul has become a global city and much more advanced than before, but I still feel that we have some long way to go. And not only Korean companies, but also foreign companies needs to be attracted to Seoul, so that we can make use of the talented human resources. And that will help us create more jobs in the city as well. We need to create such foundation so that more young people can come to Seoul and become more vibrant members of the society. So it's time to ask the last question.
So digital transformation is now connected to not only the economic activities, but for other aspects. So maybe can you pinpoint one area? Well, as you may well know, Seoul has made a lot of efforts to become smart city. So there was a Smart City Expo Congress, and Seoul was awarded, and Seoul also got a certification for the smart city as well. So it's making a lot of efforts. And you think, so we know that Seoul has been certified and awarded, but what are we feeling actually in our daily life? First of all, I think the first example can be the Seoul Safety app. So 40,000 CCTVs and this application are connected together so that all Seoul citizens, especially women, can return to their home safely. So it has been operated for 10 years, and in 2019, sexual violence was prevented because of this operation of this application. And after Mayor Oh took his office, he is now implementing many different policies to support a single household, especially the seniors who live by themselves. So application is flexible, so maybe that is why digital technologies are developing, focusing on application, but I hope we will go beyond to apply more sophisticated digital application as well.
So competitiveness of Seoul from the perspective of foreigners and from the perspective of local citizens have been the topic of our discussion. I hope that what we discussed today will be helpful for Seoul to improve its competitiveness and the quality of living for its citizens. With this, I would like to wrap up the special dialogue. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation. For global competitiveness of Seoul, we had this special dialogue. We have diagnosed the reality, current status of Seoul, and strategies to achieve further growth. I would like to thank the moderator and the presenters and panelists for their contribution to the special dialogue. Now it's time to start the second session. First of all, I would like to explain about the event we are having. So you have just finished the first session, and now we're going to start the second session. Please capture the screen of the sessions and put the hashtag of Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021. And if you upload the photo on your SNS, we will give you a cultural gift voucher and a free giveaway. I would like to ask for your active participation in this event. Now, let us start the second session. The topic is adding more to the city's attractiveness. We're going to talk about the strategies to grow the city in the areas of culture, tourism, and beauty. Let us have a look at the opening video.
다양한 문화, 다양한 만남.
다양성이 좀 많고 개방성.
무채색의 건물들과 대조되는 주황색을 띠는 궁궐들.
It's quite lyrical and peaceful atmosphere.
So many colors and vibrancy and a lot of people.
It's a very convenient city. I think it's a very safe city.
역사적으로나 문화적으로 시대들이 가장 많이 겹쳐서 보존이 되어 있어서 공존해서 잘 살아가고 있다. 그게 큰 매력 포인트라고 생각합니다.
Everything is more convenient here. Metro system, how things are connected. It's so much bigger than my city, but like to get from one side of the city to the other side, I think you can get like from one side to the other side in like 30 minutes, which is insanely fast. Everything is so well connected.
A great sense of security. I really like that. I don't feel like I have to look over my shoulder walking home at night or... Older Americans who primarily hear about Korea through the news, some of them see it as almost a dangerous city because of how close North Korea is.
Like so many people ask me, oh, so are you going to South or to North Korea on exchange? Which is just ridiculous if you even know the slightest bit about history, of course. But I do think that people's knowledge about Korea is getting increasingly large. So for example, because of the music industry that's like expanding to other parts of the world. Me and my friends, we love Peggy Goo, for example, the Korean DJ. Yeah, also because of things like Squid Game, I think more and more people are starting to get to know a bit about Korea.
Hong Kong? Yeah, so you have no worries, and so your speech is quite, your discourse at least is much more meaningful and much more profound because you don't have the weight of everything on you, and so just staying on the river, talking about anything, I think it's one of my favorite spots, to be honest.
SEOUL's인데요. 음식점, 식당과 영화관, 뭐 서점 등 문화나 흘러가는 트렌드도 파악할 수 있고요.
일주로가 가장 좋았던 것 같아요. 뭔가 어르신들이 가는 뭐 다방이나 어르신들이 가는 음식점 이런 것들도 있고 그 바로 옆에 20대, 10대들만 갈 만한 그런 되게 힙한 곳들도 섞여 있고
건물이 굉장히 많고 많은 사람들이 밀집되어 있는 도시이지만 얼마나 자연이 또 가까이 있는지.
If I took them to the Han River, I'd want them to experience like the world-class chime. You know, chicken I think is like fried chicken is like unparalleled.
친구들이 K 콘텐츠라고 하면 아이돌이라던가 뭐 BTS 이런 걸 알고 있어요. 한국에는 더 재미있는 콘텐츠도 많이 있거든요. 현대미술박물관을 가면 새로운 작가라던가 한국인들의 문화, 기획을 다양한 측면에서 즐길 수 있어서 그곳을 친구와 함께 가고 싶고요.
This brings them to deambulate in the streets, especially around I think Itaewon, like just also to see the burgeoning ambience there, because I think it's what makes Seoul. It's even more than its places, it's the combination of the two.
So for example, my sister, she loves clothes and shopping, so I would immediately take her to Dongmyo markets. I would take my mom maybe to Angguk and to show her like the more traditional side of Seoul.
Traditional aspect to its history, to its culture, that could be a main center of interest, but that is not as easily conveyed, at least in the Western perspectives.
It seems to me that Seoul's quite concerned about looking modern and kind of building all of this like kind of more postmodern architecture, I guess. Its personality could be shown a little bit better if it kind of leaned more into the traditional architecture, I guess.
한국 콘텐츠가 가지고 있는 그 본연의 콘텐츠를 좀 더 강하게 보여줘도 될 것 같아요. 지금 넷플릭스에서 유명한 뭐 오징어 게임이나 평창올림픽 때 개막식, 폐막식 때 행사들처럼 보면 전부 다 우리나라가 가지고 있는 콘텐츠들을 약간 트렌디하게 녹여내가지고 재밌게 풀어냈던 거라고 생각을 하거든요. K컬처의 매운맛 버전의 그런 브랜딩들을 좀 더 전폭적으로 더 많이 해서 그냥 외국인들이 한국에 왔을 때 한국 콘텐츠 되게 트렌디하구나, 한국의 전통 것들도 이렇게 되게 트렌디한 모습들이 보여질 수 있구나, 이런 것들을 서울에 더 많이 심어줬으면 좋겠다는 생각입니다.
So that was an interview that we could see the images of Seoul that were seen by the Seoul citizens and the foreigners who are living in Seoul. So that was really interesting video, and I hope that such hopes will be well delivered to Seoul. Now let's begin the session 2, and before that I'd like to introduce the speakers of session 2. So we all have them in the studio. First of all, we have Professor Kim Byung-hee, and he will be the moderator for the panel discussion. So he's from the Sewon University. And now let me introduce the speakers. Vice President Song Gil-young of Vibe Company. So he is really well known in this area. And next we have Professor Jung Jong-eun from Sangji University. Thank you very much for being here. So he is an expert in the cultural related policies. And next we have Ms. Ryu Jung-ah from the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute. So she is a well-known expert for the cultural tourism. Last but not least, we have Mr. Kim Mang-gi, the CEO of Future Job. She is also teaching at a university for this topic as well. So thank you very much, the speakers, for being here. And then I know that many people have very high expectation for the presentation. So now let's begin with the first presentation. So we are going to listen to first presentation from Vice President Song Gil-young from Vibe Company. He is a very well-known mind miner. And then he's going to talk about soulish soul. So let's look at the as a perspective of the big data expert about the future of soul.
네, 안녕하세요. 송길영입니다.
Hello, I am Song Gil-young and I read people's mind from the data. I live and work in Seoul, and I want to talk about the soul-like soul. So now let's look at the feeling of soul. So, what is this song? So this is an iconic song that tells the emotion and the feeling of the city. And how about this? No fun city comparison. Maybe if you are the citizens of these cities, then you would feel unsatisfied to see this. But maybe you think that these cities are not fun. And there was a bread festival in Daejeon, and I asked why they are doing it, and then they said that they are called no fun cities, so that is why they were holding this bread event. And then the sympathy that can be given by the language. First, I saw you, and I am coex means I'm lost, and I'm Sindarim means there are so many people, and I'm so Gangwon means it's too cold, and it's too Daegu, that means it's too hot, and etc. And then you can see that the cities have certain images, as you can see here. So I think the experiences accumulated the image. And then when I saw these images, then how can we embody these images? Do you know 삼각지? Can you think of this song? That means you are old, kind of old. And this is 삼각지 song these days. So does it match the image of 삼각지 that you have? The images always change following the development and activities. So it's always changing. But how can we recognize the changes? This is a Seoul playlist that lets you feel the feeling of Seoul. And when you see these lists, you will know what is Seoul like, actually. And when you listen to these music, you can think of the city and you can feel the city from your playlist. And this is a list of Seoul city, and you can see that the musicians are like some of them are legendary musicians and some are young musicians. So we can say that Seoul is dynamic and it is changing and it is giving some newness to people. And you may think that this is the beautiful Seoul. They look so beautiful, right? Do you want to go there? Yes. But we have already been there. But actually they look kind of different because the perspective of the filmmaker or the video recorder were so beautiful. So that is why the attractiveness was added to these kind of video clips. So that is why we feel that by watching these videos. There are so many people who explore Seoul and they find out the hotspots of Seoul and they let people know about these beautiful aspects. So they are the PR activists of Seoul and they are the citizens and they are the marketers and promoters of Seoul at the same time. Then how about Seoul citizens? Actually, what is interesting is that local people talk about Seoul more. So because we always say Hwamdo or Ulji로, but not Seoul. But in the local areas, people say, oh, I went to Seoul. So these local people talk about Seoul more. They talk about the apartment prices or the landscape. But they are just some parts of Seoul, but rather than that, they talk about the bigger city. What is interesting is That Seoul is now used for storytelling, like visiting the delicious K-food restaurants and visiting friends and etc. So they are all recorded. So location, identity, and occasion are all combined together to make the story. And then when we have that story as a background, our lives will be more diversified and dynamic, and people will think that Seoul is a fantastic city and attractive city. So rather than showing unilateral perspective, we have to allow many different diverse perspectives at the same time. So life has become more important. So more than that, more than before, because of COVID, people are paying more attention to the daily life. People were just busy before, but now they are settlers. They set the table, cook for themselves, and get along with their family members and friends. And they are bigger. They have bigger hope. So when we see the daily life or daily lifestyle of Seoulers, we eat healthy and we make the daily routines more sophisticated. So we are using more energy to do that. So that means that people want to make the daily life more beautiful. So what I want to tell you is that Seoul Light and Seoul Life are what I want to know. So we are now operating an observation center, and we have many different reports. Daily routine, like skincare routine and morning routines are, for example, what we are now studying, like managing the daily life of people, and we look into the daily life of people who actually live to the fullest. So they exercise and they spend the weekend and they read in the morning. So they are now being structured, and people's thinking is now changing. So in the past, people were really crave to have more physical things, but now people love environment and they are trying to increase the sustainability. So vegan has become a keyword. In the past, when we said vegan, well, let's say if I'm a vegetarian, then it was just changing the daily life. But now vegan is an adjective to talk about their philosophy. So vegan is not just eating vegetables, but it is the attitude towards lifestyle and philosophy of the life, and even more sophisticated notion of people. So people are now communicating and exchanging with more people in this way. So people felt guilty from the relationship among people, but now among the relationship with people and the earth. So we are now trying to form better relationships with other entities. And I want to talk about mountain climbing. Can we climb the mountain in the inner city? Seoul is very unique because it has many different mountains inside the city. So you can just visit mountains by taking subways inside the city. So we can just enjoy walking inside the city and climbing the mountains and etc. So it can be a very good point. And we have to record this and let people know because they are the very unique privileges enjoyed by Seoul citizens. So we can say that Seoul is attractive. How about Hangang? You can eat delicious food, you can walk with people, you can run in the morning and in the evening, and there are many activities now being done. So we have to observe and we have to let people know about this. So it is really important element for the branding. So diverse Seoul is what we are seeing. So the emotion and feeling are accumulated and spreaded among people. So not the brochures, but our daily lives are just well portrayed by citizens, and we have excellent network. So our life is getting better, and then we are the center of a culture, and our notion about the culture is now changing. So that is why Seoul is now increasing its stance to become the city where anyone wants to live. So that is how we are making the future. So we have been an excellent city, and now we need to become an attractive city. Then we can maybe add present and the past at the same time, and then based on that, we can make up the future. So what can I say? So I hope this will give the new points to Seoul. So this is the future of Seoul. So different perspective about the daily life. So they are our daily life, but to some people they look unique. So based on that, we can make something really cool and fantastic. So and we will always mind the minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very dynamic presentation. So he talked about many things in such a short time. He talked about what it means to be a soul, and he also talked about the sensitivity and emotional elements of soul. And he also talked about the future of soul. We'd like to talk more about this topic in the discussion session. Let me introduce to you the second presenter. The second presenter is going to make presentation on Seoul Smart Power Strategy. Professor Jung Jong-un from Sangji University will make the presentation. Nice to meet you all. I am Jung Jong-un. My major is cultural policy, so my presentation is focused on cultural policy. My presentation is composed of 4 pillars. First of all, I would like to talk about the necessity to look for another big leap in the era of COVID-19. And secondly, I would like to talk about the next generation of Korean wave. First of all, let me talk about the COVID-19. COVID-19 has hit us all with strong intensity and in a rapid manner. Due to COVID-19, many people have experienced difficulties, and if we look back on the history, in the 14th century, there was the plague in the Europe, and we had Great Depression in the US, and in the 20th century, we had the financial crisis. All these crises have hit our lives very hard, and while experiencing those difficulties, we came to find a new way of life because we had to survive. And there have been changes in the systems of organizations, including schools and companies, and the non-contact activities have become a new normal. And digital ecosystem has become more abundant than before. And the role of the local government and central government has become highlighted with the experience of COVID-19. And it seems that the fourth industrial revolution has become closer to our daily lives after COVID-19. And so, or many people thought that we need to resemble the advanced countries. We need to follow suit of advanced countries. However, such mindset has become dramatically changed as we experience COVID-19. While practicing social distancing as well, the way of our life has become changed, and our interest in our local communities and neighbors have become more important than ever through the experience of COVID-19. This is the background against which we need to think about the future of Seoul. And in the midst of COVID-19, we have seen the Korean cultural content becoming popular across the world. We have experienced another new wave of Korean cultural popularity. You see BTS, director Bong Joon-ho of the movie Parasite and Squid Game. These Korean contents have become very popular across the world. As you may know, there have been many researches on the Korean wave. So this is the phenomenon where the Korean pop culture becomes popular across many regions across the world, creating a global fandom and continuous popularity and influence. There are 4 stages for the Korean culture to become popular. Stage 1, 2, and 3 have something in common. Until stage 1, 2, and 3 of the Korean wave, Korea was not yet a fully developed country. Korea was somewhat envious of other advanced countries and were trying to find its own identity. In the first stage of Korean wave, the Korean pop culture became popular in China and Southeast Asia, but in 2017 and very recently, a global fandom has been created for the Korean cultural content. And now, which is the direction we need to pursue? So for now, the stage we have reached is different from stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Korean wave. So we have looked at the elements or reasons of the success of Korean wave. The first reason is innovative cultural policies. Based on the innovative cultural policies, businesses have grown along with the fresh content from the perspectives of developing countries and from the perspectives of developed countries. The Korean cultural content looked very sophisticated and sensational and fresh. And finally, in July 2021, Korea made it to the list of advanced countries, which was the announcement made by UNCTAD. Now it's time for Korea to take another leap, aiming to communicate with the whole humanity. As Korea became one of the most advanced countries, we need to have a different, fresh approach to the Korean wave. We've been talking a lot about soft power, but we need to move one step further to achieve smart power. Many researchers are talking about smart power. Smart power is a combination of hard power and soft power. Soft power is something that you use your attractiveness, and soft power is a way of communication that costs less and very peaceful way of persuading the others. In the case of Seoul, do you think Seoul has the competitiveness in terms of soft power and hard power? Compared with other Asian cities like Tokyo, many people say that Seoul has great hard power. But in terms of soft power, we have some question marks in our mind, because Seoul is the epicenter of the Korean wave. But in terms of the international arena, does Seoul have the soft power? Of course, Seoul has implemented various strategies to make itself a city of culture. And the Seoul 2030 vision features the plans to make Seoul the future city of sensitivity and emotion. But as mentioned before, Korean wave has become popular across the world. But that is our national brand. It's Korean wave, not Seoul wave. So we need to look for ways to increase the smart power of Seoul. I'd like to talk about 4 things. First of all, I would like to talk about smart power at international level. national level and individual level. First of all, at international level, we need universal talents platform. Many people say that we need to have the talent magnet strategy. In the first session, some presenters said that many foreigners come to Korea to study, but they are often just neglected and not fully used. From now on, we need to have a platform to make a use of universal talents, including the talents from other countries. In the left side of the slide, you see the photo of Lisa, the Blackpink. On the right side, you see the actor Ali, who appeared in Squid Game. So in Thailand and India, such cultural content became very popular. And these contents do not have Seoul included. By using budget and talent and brand of Seoul, we need to attract these talents, grow them, and send them to the wider world. The same is true for the national level, smart power. For the past 30 to 40 years, we have achieved industrial growth in a short period of time. How did we achieve that? All talented individuals came to Seoul. For example, they went to high school in their hometown, and when they were just about to enter college, they came to Seoul, making contribution to the development of the city. So far, many people have rushed to Seoul, achieving economic growth, and now it's time to have a constellation strategy, which means that we need to distribute the potential of the talented people and let them unleash their potential, which will have influence on other cities as well. And within each district of Seoul, we need to establish an innovative system for the growth of the community culture. And at personal level, we need to combine the individual creativity and the city's creativity. So we need to prepare an enriched ecosystem where creative personnel can grow. So at global, national, local, and personal level, we need to implement these strategies to improve our soft power and smart power. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your presentation. In the era of COVID-19, based on digital platform, the Korean culture has become much more popular. And he mentioned that Seoul needs to have an optimal combination of soft power and hard power and improve its smart power. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we have 2 more presentations left. I'd like to show you a video clip. This video clip features dynamic Taekwondo group performance. Taekwondo has been the main element that helped us spread the Korean culture. And in an America's Got Talent show, Korean Taekwondo performance team got great popularity. Let us have a look at the video clip featuring the Taekwondo group performance.
Safety in daily life. KC mind, originally young soul. With the renovation, enjoy development. Future Bible soul. Sold into the world, got your technology for 2 millennium year. Global leading soul. Stand up for international city, fair city soul.
서울 어디 영차 서울은 계속된다. 가장 서울답게. Your soul goes on.
So, Your Soul Goes On. So that was the promotional video to see the dynamics of Seoul through Taekwondo. So we are now having the second session of Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021, and please let me introduce the third speaker of the session 2. So that's Ms. So Ryu Jung-ah from the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute. So she's going to talk about how to improve the Seoul Global City competitiveness through the culture. Hello, I'm very happy to meet you, and today I want to talk about how to improve the city competitiveness through culture and tourism of Seoul Festa. So how we can improve the competitiveness, but I want to combine them all together as Seoul Festa. So I want to talk about the festivals. Actually, this industry is in downturn, but at the same time, I think it is now time to make preparation to make a new leap forward. So today I want to talk about the representative culture and tour festivals in Seoul, and as well as the cases that we can refer to outside Korea, and how we can benchmark and utilize our assets and resources to develop our festivals. And then I want to analyze the SWOT of the Seoul Festa, as well as the strategies to build a brand identity and system. There are about 300 to 500 festivals available in Seoul. And then we can say that the number is the biggest among 17 cities. And you can see the list of the festivals that took place in Seoul in the past 2 years. So on the left, you see the festivals that are hosted by Seoul City by investing like 10 billion Korean won. And on the right, you see like smaller festivals that are now hosted every month. So as there are so many festivals, I cannot introduce all of them, but let's categorize them and let me introduce you. So these are the Drum Festival and Kimjang Culture Festival. So they are related to the spirits and culture and heritages of Korean people, but not too long history yet. And these are the music festival, street arts festival, and Han River Mongdang Festival. So they are really young and dynamic and spectacular for the young people. So they use the artistic assets to host this very big size, big scale festivals, but not long history as well. And this is some smaller festivals that are done by local districts like Gwanakgu, Songpagu, and you can see like Lamp Street Festival and etc. So they highlight the various history and religion and cultures of different districts. They are hosted by the local district government or organizations. And these are also voluntary festivals that were led by like smaller districts like Insadong, Mapo, and Luwon, and etc. So they have different purposes and different settings. And you can easily understand what they are for. And what are the stories that they want to explore and promote? Well, actually, we didn't think about it that much because we were just busy enjoying the festivals themselves. But actually, festivals are the core that people and citizens can develop the economy and culture of the cities. That means stories should be repeatedly said by the participants and other people as well. Only then they can prolong the history. So those festivals, Seoul Festas that I show you, have short history, but we can maybe see some foreign cases. For example, like Bull Festival in Spain or the firework festival of Valencia, for example. So they are festivals, but at the same time, the stories are well known across the world. So the Inca citizens who lived under like Spain have developed this festival to talk about the story and social conflicts or some blessing from the gods and etc. So they use this red powder and yellow powder to relieve the social conflicts, for example. And this is the immigration festivals that people had some. They talk about some histories and stories of the past. And this is Brazil's festival, and they talk about the historical stories of the religions and slavery system and among people. So they expose these kind of stories to people, and then they enjoy the festivals at the same time. So these stories are well melted down in the festival that you can see here, like minorities cultures, and their specific features and characteristics are well shown in these kind of festivals. So we can see these examples well around the world. And then the economic benefits are also gained. But not only that, but they also host these kind of festival for the humanism purposes and arts and culture and history. So they are not related to the current status of the cities, but they try to pass this down for generation because it is important for the country and the city. So not only the cultural aspects, but also the tourism aspects are well highlighted because of the festivals. But how about Seoul Festa? So let's look at the Seoul cases. Well, we have many strengths, like high quality capital, high human capital, and the cultural assets and etc. But they could not be sustained for a very long time because like popular festivals are cancelled out of nowhere, and some festivals change their format or names and etc. But I believe that all people have desire to have good festivals inside their cities. And in order to do that, we need a lot of policies and systems, as well as the interest from the citizens. So we should make efforts and develop strategies to increase them altogether. So I want to talk about 4 aspects. First, we need to agree to host such events. And we need to develop the system to improve the sustainability and cultural diversity. What I mean by the cultural diversity is that there are 3 universal values that we need to highlight. So the festival should not be just temporary, that we just enjoy briefly and end it. We have to talk about the history and the spirit of people and heritages that we have shared for a very long time, and they should be all concentrated in the festivals. So you should be universal, and it should be common, and it should tell us that we all coexist together. So universal values must be highlighted. And secondly, we are now living in the ultra connectivity era. So festivals can work as a language, even though they're not spoken language. So I think that is the content that we can promote the cities to the world. And then we can also talk about those stories that have not been talked before, but we can take festivals as an opportunity to open the platform to talk about this and have some sympathy about that issue as well. So we can increase the cultural values and maybe bring some solutions to that. And thirdly, shopping and tourism can also be the third pillar, but we should not just stay on the shopping and tourism only because they are too simple, and we have to go beyond. So we have to melt down the values, and we have to make the killer content, storytelling, and we have to advance the administrative support system. Seoul City is trying to host its own festivals, but rather than that, I think they have to focus more on raising the experts who can actually plan, develop, and support these kind of festivals in the city. So that is one way to realize the convergence that we talk about a lot. So Seoul City is making a lot of efforts. So we have so many things to do in this area, and we have abundant human capital to actually realize this, and we have positive vision. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We had a look at the festivals across the world, and we also learned about what we can do to promote the festivals to identify and improve the brand image of Seoul as well. I hope that Seoul's brand will be further improved and the brand awareness will be improved as well. Now I'd like to introduce to you the last presenter. The last presenter was actually the first Korean student to study in China. Now he is carrying out activities as an advisor to the foreign policy relations and trade aspects in the relationship between Korea and China. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to meet you all. I am Kim Man-gi. I am very pleased to talk about the potential of Seoul as the hub of global beauty industry. I would like to talk about what we need to do to help Seoul become the hub of beauty industry. You may have heard that Korean cosmetics products are very popular in China. In China, Korean cosmetics may face crisis. You might have not thought about this aspect, so I would like to explain more details about this idea. Especially the biggest customer of our beauty industry and at the same time the biggest competitor of beauty industry is actually China. Let's have a look at the market size of Chinese beauty industries. Chinese beauty industry size has increased more than double for the past 5 years. The per capita beauty consumption in China is $50 as of 2019, but the amount of per capita beauty consumption will increase in the future. In terms of the market share in the cosmetics market, China is rapidly growing, and in the near future, China will surpass the US in terms of its share in the cosmetics market. In the cosmetics consumption market, the Chinese cosmetics consumption market has constantly increased even during COVID-19. then Chinese beauty market has made remarkable growth. Then what is the situation of Korean K-beauty business in China? You may be thinking that K-beauty is doing very well in the Chinese market, but let's see the reality. In terms of the import of the cosmetics, Korea was the country where China imported the largest amount of cosmetics in 2018, but as we go to 2019 and 2020, the share of Korea decreased in terms of the countries from which China imports cosmetics. And if you look at the level of increase of share in the Chinese market, you can see that the figures for Korea is falling down rapidly in the Chinese market. This is the market share of basic cosmetics in Chinese market. Let's have a look at the ranking from the top ranking 1 till the 17th. As you know, the European cosmetics brands from France and the US are ranked at the top 3 or 10. Korean brands are not included in the top 10. Korean cosmetics named Who has been sold very well in China, but those brands didn't make it to the top 10. And surprisingly, you can see the name of Chinese companies. The name of Chinese companies that you are not familiar with at all are included in the list of the cosmetics companies that have high share in the Chinese market. You may be surprised to find that the Chinese cosmetics industries have grown this much. And Korean cosmetics brands are sandwiched between Chinese cosmetics and Western cosmetics. In the mid-end or low-end cosmetics market, Chinese cosmetics companies are making rapid growth. In the high-end premium breeds, Western cosmetics have occupied almost all of the market share. So Korean cosmetics are sandwiched between the Chinese cosmetics and Western cosmetics. The same thing happened to Samsung. In the past, Samsung had the largest share of market in China, but as Chinese companies like Xiaomi and Huawei grew, Samsung's market share in Chinese cell phone market decreased to a very low level. So, in China, premium cell phones are regarded as the ones made by Apple's. And many Chinese people prefer to buy Apple or the cell phones produced by Chinese companies, not by Korean companies. So in order to prevent what happened in the cell phone industry from happening again in cosmetics industry, we need to think about the ways to make a breakthrough. This is the characteristics of the MZ generation in China in terms of consumption, especially Gen Z in China enjoy patriotic consumption. This is very important point. What is patriotic consumption? Patriotic consumption means that Gen Z and millennial generation of China buy products made by China. These young generations have received education about the patriotism and pride about China, and that's why they prefer to buy the Chinese products and Chinese brands whose performance and the quality they think have been ensured. And that is adding more problems to the conflict between China and the US in terms of the trade affairs. So as more and more MZ generations use Chinese brands products, Chinese companies' competitiveness will become even stronger than before. So please have a look at the diagram. Young people who were born in the 1980s and 2000s, they all prefer Chinese brands. And this is the Chinese consumers' interest in their local brands. In 2009, Chinese consumers' interest in their own country's brand was only 38%, but in 2019, Chinese consumers' interest in their own local brands have significantly increased to 70%. So, young generations in China enjoy online purchase, especially they are influenced a lot by the so-called Wanghongs, the influencers. So many young Chinese people are buying cosmetics products through influencers. So beauty industry is an important source of profit for the economy. And Korean beauty industry has grown significantly at a level that its export surpasses the amount of export made by the home appliances industry. And why is Seoul when we talk about beauty industry? Because Seoul has the best infrastructure to grow beauty industry. And Seoul is the location where the Korean culture and cultural tourism resources are concentrated. By using these attractiveness, we can enhance the beauty industry in Seoul. And we have a large number of people visiting Dongdaemun. That's why Dongdaemun can be the very center of beauty industry. Dongdaemun also has advantages in terms of convenient transportation. So the Seoul type beauty industry, actually I would like to call Seoul the capital of beauty industry. It means that everything about beauty can be found in Seoul. Then what is the image of beauty capital Seoul? If you would like to see the beauty trend, if you are looking for beauty experts, you can visit Seoul. That's the image of Seoul we would like to promote. And I would like to propose several strategies to do this. First of all, beauty tech is at its early stage across the world. Seoul can be the city that leads the trend of beauty tech, and Seoul can serve as the platform for nurturing beauty industry-related talents. We can also hold beauty festivals in Seoul that can be enjoyed by all people across the world. And recently, on the 11th of November, Alibaba sold about 100 trillion won of the beauty products. So we need to grow beauty industry in Korea and develop live commerce industry and achieve further growth of beauty industry. Also, we need to have a more expanded, we need to apply expanded scope of beauty. So beauty industry encompasses a variety of elements like the beauty-oriented tourism. So we need to enhance such image of Seoul as the hub of beauty. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your presentation. With the growing Chinese cosmetics market, he has diagnosed the current status of Korean beauty market and emphasized the necessity to solidify the foundation of beauty industry in Seoul. And the presenters gave a lot of proposals to make Seoul a more attractive city. And someday we can receive more visits of citizens from across the world, especially as we return to normal daily lives. And before we start the discussion session, I would like to show you the video clip again, Seoul Vision 2030 PR video. Let's have a look at the video.
Safety in daily life, KC mind, religion soul. With the innovation, angel development. Teach Bible soul, soul. Soul into the world, got your bad technology, virtue, millennium year. Global leading soul, stand up for international city, fair city soul.
서울은 계속된다. 가장 서울답게. Your Seoul goes on.
So have you enjoyed the video clip? I think that the melody will linger in my ears for a long time. Now we're going to have the last discussion session. The 4 presenters will be joining the discussion session. We're going to start the discussion. I would like to introduce the moderator. Professor Kim Kyung-hee from the Department of Advertising at Seoul University will be serving as the moderator. He is also an advisor to Seoul Metropolitan Government. I would like to hand over my microphone to Professor Kim. Nice to meet you all. My name is Kim Byung-hee. Today we listen to the 4 insightful presentations with concrete, specific examples and strategies. Thank you very much for the good presentations. If I summarize all the presentations, the keyword is attractiveness. Attractiveness is something that you don't need to explain why you're attractive. Attractiveness is something that you feel. So it is necessary to encourage people to feel that Seoul is an attractive city, attractive to visit and attractive to live in. So to each of the speakers, I would like to ask a question, and let us start the discussion session then now. First of all, I would like to ask question to Mr. Song Ki-ryung.
So you talk about Seoul and Seoul-like. So when we add up the attractiveness of Seoul, so what is the city that people want to live in? So we think Seoul-like is a positive word, but can we maybe summarize in one sentence? Well, containing everything in just one sentence cannot be objective to draw like sympathy from people. I think Seoul-like is Seoul-like. We talk about the feeling, facilities, and landscape, and some physical things about cities, first of all. But I believe that the liveliness of the citizens must be ensured at the beginning. So Seoul, for Seoul citizens, is the most important aspect. But rather than that, we just saw some physical things that were displayed from the city. So they were promoted more in the past, but how we express in our daily life is what people want to feel. So I think that is what Seoul-like means.
So, the life of Seoul citizens can be actually explained through the city Seoul. And in the previous presentation, you mentioned that the future of Seoul can be seen from different angles. Attractive city is something that cannot be achieved with only economic value. It needs more value-added ones. Then how can we make Seoul more attractive? I would like to ask for your opinions.
So the most important thing owned by Seoul and Korea was dynamism, because the pace was speed, and we just press ourselves to speed up our economic growth. So they were so pressed down. So that was the value and attractiveness of Seoul. But diversity related to this should be well recognized by people, and it should be embraced by people from now on. And also, now city is recognized as a life scale around the world. And then we recently studied this. And then we saw that cities around the world are not competing against each other, but they're boasting their unique characteristics and features and try to boast their attractiveness. So I think we should stick to and realize and care for the people's concept about the daily life, and we need to prepare to suit this and support this.
In the presentation, the last keyword was mining mind.
So if we translate into Korean, maybe I think this is kind of excavating, like mining something from the cave, for example. So you want to mine the minds of people, right? So when Seoul citizens and global citizens look at Seoul, do you want to mine the minds of these people? Right, that's the right explanation. Knowing the mindset of other people, that can be meaningful when we care for their mind. So, and then we have to meet their expectations. So knowing is not enough. So we need to embrace them more.
Thank you very much for proposing a very interesting keyword. And the next presentation was made by Professor Jung Jong-un. I'd like to ask you a question.
And I want to ask a question to senior researcher Ryu Jong-ah first, and then I will move on to Professor Song and Dr. Kim. There was a great presentation, and then I think the keywords were that when it comes to shopping and tourism, it was the former past, and we need to make a transition to the value tourism. And you said that the Seoul festivals must promote values more than scale, and should be able to tell the storytelling. Only then they can have the global city competitiveness. So how can we systemize the Seoul's values and let foreigners know about the attractiveness of Seoul? So I think I only had 10 minutes, so I don't know if I have explained enough. during the 10 minutes, but thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to add more comments. I said that we need to move on to the value tourism, but I don't want you to misunderstand. Shopping is important, but we have to move beyond, because Seoul wants to become top 5 cities, but we are actually a very big city, mega city, at the top ranking. And we cannot just focus on economic growth or industrialization. I think that time has passed. So I think when we just ran for the economic growth, we didn't want to talk about what actually impeded our growth, but we cannot just grow continuously. There are so many invisible challenges and different visions and values and differentiation, discrimination and conflicts, and like different opinions about same topic and etc. People did not accept the different opinions in the past. And then we just focus on making a economic leap forward in the past. But now we are on a stable stage compared to the past. And in this case, I believe that we need to pursue better quality of life. And in order to do that, we cannot just talk about the numbers only, but maybe some invisible things that we cannot see in the journey. But we cannot talk about it all the time. And if we bring the issues in a wrong way, then the social conflicts will be more fierce. But I think festival is a really great medium to talk about these social conflicts and issues, because it's not our daily life, but sometimes, you can do something very unusual during the festivals. So I think we can talk about the real issues that we cannot talk during the daily life, and maybe we can boost, we can maybe talk about or bring about the complaints or the conflicts that we had in our heart during the festival period. That means we don't have to pay unnecessary social capital. And if you go to developed countries, there are so many and many more festivals. In France and Spain, they have like 100,000 festivals, while Korea has about 10,000 festivals. They have many festivals not because they like to play, but because that is they are the venues to explode some of the issues that they had before, but in a positive way. So festivals are a good opportunity to have better communication. So from that, we can extract the history and identify the common values and promote what we want to boast from our city. I think that is a Seoul's value. It is not like physical abundancy, but we have to go beyond, and we have to ensure the quality of life, and festivals are the medium of such conversation and communication. So only then we'll be able to attract the attractiveness of the city of Seoul. So that is why I talk about this valuable tourism. So that was a really important keyword, value tourism, and we need to make a paradigm shift. So I think you have shared many different festival cases inside and outside Korea, and when we go to other countries and local areas, we were so mesmerized by festivals, and we always say that that was a really fresh shock. And Seoul City has hosted many different festivals, but still there are something that we can do better. Just like Ms. Ryu said, and as she is the expert here, is there anything that Seoul must make improvement? Well, I think it is not appropriate to say too many critics, but It's difficult to make festivals that everyone can be satisfied. But as an international city, in order to express our value, we need to think in some different ways as well. So even though we have so much money, we cannot just make and host a festival all of a sudden. So we have to know, we have to understand why we must host this festival in Seoul. So we have to find the ways to express the traditional and unique values of Korea and Seoul, but at the same time, we need to be based on the humanism, and we need to get agreement from Seoul City, and they must understand why this should be hosted. So if you make them all embedded in the festivals, that would be great, but we need to do so many things to actually realize this. And then many people will like to criticize about festivals, but we have to go beyond that. We have to push with the administrative force, and it can be led by Seoul City, but also by 25 districts of Seoul, because they have really great festivals. So maybe you can give more support so that these districts can lead more. And you need to change the system to do so. I don't think those who are in charge of festivals would like my comment, but the administration should maybe step back to support the smaller district or maybe private entities to host the better festivals. So that would be better policies that Seoul can consider to be more sustainable.
Thank you very much. In the presentation, she mentioned the diversity of culture and sustainability. Also, she suggested directions for Seoul City. I would like to ask a question to Professor Jung Jong-un from Sangji University. In your presentation, the keyword I remembered was smart power. We often talk about hard power or soft power. We need to make a wise and smart combination of soft power and hard power, which is what we call smart power. It sounds very great. And how do you think Seoul can enhance its global city competitiveness by using smart power? So he suggested that we need to create a platform to nurture creative talent in Seoul. The precondition in what I said regarding smart power, so far Seoul has focused on developing hard power and boasting about hard power. Now, in order to develop smart power, we need to nurture the soft power, about which we have been a bit negligent. In order to grow soft power, we have 4 types of activities to be done at global level, at local level, at community level, and at personal level. At these 4 levels, we need to put into practice the strategies I mentioned to improve the soft power of the city. One of the examples is that we need to create a platform to foster creative talents. That's one of the ways to enhance the soft power of the city. There's an episode I want to share with you. So there's an expression, creative talents habitat. In the 21st century, the importance of creative talents have become ever more highlighted these days. And regarding creative city, Charles Randall, a renowned expert, talked about the creative city, and he visited many Korean cities, including Daegu. And he visited a small city and came back to Seoul and had an interview with me. I asked him, "You visited large cities of Korea. This time you visited a small city. What was your impression?" And he said he loved visiting the small city, and he gave me this keyword. In Seoul, I wasn't really able to feel the human scale, because when he visit large cities like Seoul, he visit the downtowns and crowded areas. But he said that when he visited the small city in Korea, he felt the human skills, human-related characteristics of the city. And in the central government, when they evaluate the city competitiveness, I had this experience. At first, a district in Seoul, which is called Gangbuk District, said that you have to choose us as the innovative district because we have this or that resource that is better than Gangnam. And some people coming from Gyeonggi province say that we are lack of certain resources compared to Seoul, so you have to support us these resources. And people from small cities say that we don't have much resource compared to the metropolitan areas. You have to provide us with more resources. So it seems that all districts of cities, and including the rural areas and the local communities, all feel that they are lack of resources all the time. And in order to overcome these problems, I think we need to focus on our daily lives, including the lives of our citizens and our community members. In this regard, we need to prepare a platform to nurture creative talents. As I mentioned in my presentation, we need to make a combination of creativity between experts and citizens. The 25 districts of Seoul have their own history and characteristics. They need to have their own direction to be pursued, and they need to engage their community members as well. So he emphasized the importance of the term habitat of creative talents. And Seoul would like to become a city where the present, past, and the future coexist with each other. And there was a big popularity of Korean culture, and the presenter mentioned that's Korean wave, not Seoul wave. Then in order to make Seoul a more attractive city, in order to make Seoul a city of emotion and sensitivity, what kind of tasks do you think we have to do? District in Seoul and citizens need to be engaging in the activities to promote the growth of Seoul. And we also need to change our mindset and perceptions. Previous speaker said that we need to do away from the traditional way of achieving economic growth. And in order to increase soft power, we need to focus on improving the relations among different communities and regions in our country, including the relationship between Seoul and other regions. For example, we had a look at the video clip with BTS. BTS has 7 members. None of those 7 members are from Seoul. 2 members from Busan, 2 from Daegu, 2 from Gwangju. And the 7 members of BTS are singing a song doing the PR of Seoul. Maybe BTS members' hometowns, they may feel that the BTS should be actually promoting our own city. But now BTS, whose members are all from cities other than Seoul are now in the video clip promoting Seoul. So what is important is that as Korea became an advanced country, developed country, our ODA budget will increase. So it's important for Seoul to improve its relationship with other cities across the nation and make investment in the efforts to achieve joint or mutual growth with other cities in Korea. So the city of Seoul needs to find a new role to play in its relationship with other cities. There is a country named Zimbabwe in Africa. In order to create music policy, the people from Zimbabwe called me and said they want to know about Korean music policy. I took an example of the singers Lisa and the actor Ali. Seoul City can actually create the platform for more development of Korean wave and Korean culture at a global level. So I believe that the officials from Seoul city government may be closely listening to your comments. Dr. Kim Man-gi is the next person to make comments. Dr. Kim Man-gi proposed the concept of beauty soul. In fashion, beauty, tech, and culture are concentrated to the idea of beauty special district, for which he mentioned that Dongdaemun would be a good place. Other regions or other cities conducted beauty industries already. And how do you think Seoul can differentiate itself from other cities in Korea in terms of its beauty business? The concept of beauty in the case of other regions of Korea, they were focused on the manufacturing of beauty industry. Seoul was the center of sales and distribution of beauty products. This time, when I said beauty industry growth in Seoul, it means that Seoul can make a use of the existing beauty industry related distribution channels and relevant infrastructure and extend the scope of beauty industry in Seoul. So Seoul can apply an expanded scope of beauty industry to its overall beauty industry related activities. And Seoul has abundant tourism resources regarding beauty. So Seoul can be the hub of beauty industry. So you have explained about the characteristics of beauty industry in Seoul. You also talked about beauty tech, beauty talents fostering, beauty wellness tourism, and so on. In your presentation, you also mentioned that Seoul needs to become more attractive as a city of beauty industry and tourism. So I felt that what you mentioned is a preemptive strategy to be taken by Seoul. In order to take a preemptive strategy, we have to foster all necessary elements of the industry. Sorry to ask you the difficult question, but what do you think we need to do? Now, Korea is a good manufacturer of cosmetics. Korea is a good manufacturer of clothing. But can we call Korea and Seoul a hub of beauty? I don't think so. In Seoul, we have beauty service or distribution industries that are well developed, but we first have to create a cluster of beauty-related businesses in Seoul. And in my understanding, there is no city that has created its own brand image as a beauty city. So in the case of Paris, Paris is the city of romance. So just like that, we can create the brand image of Seoul as the city of beauty. So we need to promote such brand image of Seoul as a city of beauty, which can attract more tourists and visitors to the city. And we need to promote the brand image of Seoul as a city of beauty at a level that could attract the global talent of beauty industry to Seoul. This morning I had sandwich for breakfast. And Korean cosmetics brands are sandwiched in Chinese market, sandwiched between Chinese brands and Western brands. In order to break away from the sandwich status, what do you think we need to do? Beauty industry is the source of profit and for the future of our economy. And I really believe that beauty industry has the potential. When foreign tourists come to Korea, they want to go shopping for beauty products. And I think the beauty industry has the potential. In Korean, beauty brands are actually operating in the Chinese market, but their growth is stagnant in China. And the Chinese competitors are quickly catching up with the growth of Korean cosmetics. Beauty industry is the source of profit for the future of our economy, and I think that it is very meaningful for Seoul to promote the beauty industry. And as a city of beauty, Seoul could be the hub of beauty, attracting the visitors and tourists from around the world who would like to find their inner beauty and external beauty. So today we listened to the presentations by the four experts, Mr. Song Gil-yeon, Professor Chung Jong-un, Dr. Yu Jung-ha, and Dr. Kim Man-gi. Thank you all for your presentation. To summarize what we have discussed, we want to make Seoul a more attractive city and a city of emotion and sensitivity in the future. According to traditional economics, human beings are rational beings, but recently we think that human beings are not always rational, they are emotional. Such theory is seen among economists. This is called behavior-based economic. In the second session, we talked about many elements from the perspective of behavior economics. Thank you very much for your presentations. And I would like to thank the citizens from Korea and from the world, from other countries around the world, for closely paying attention to our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was great moderating, Professor Kim, and that was the end of the last panel discussion of Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum 2021. So we have talked about this topic for 4 hours so that we can find out the new angles and new direction for Seoul to become more attractive global city. And then we saw that many online participants joined us in real time. I hope it was a great forum for you. We want Seoul to become the city where anyone wants to live, work, and invest. And I hope that you will join us in the journey together. Thank you very much once again for joining us despite their busy schedule, our speakers and panelists, as well as participants. And the online participants, please do not forget to join the event. And last but not least, let's watch the closing video and close the 2021 Seoul Global City Competitiveness Forum together. And we will come back to you with more abundant content. Thank you very much.
서울의 매력은 세련됨이다.
서울의 매력은 역동적인 스피드다. 서울의 매력은 에너지이다.
서울의 매력은 반짝이는 야경이다.
서울의 매력은 조화로움이다. 서울의 매력은 다양성이다.
서울의 매력은 공존이다.
I think the charm of Seoul is dynamism.
Effervescence is the charm of Seoul.
The vibrancy is the charm of Seoul.
어느 문화를 즐기고 싶든
다양한 인종, 문화, 자연과 도시까지
각각 다양한 멋을 지니고 있기 때문에
도전할 수 있는 영역과 비전이 많은 곳이라고 생각합니다.
I feel like there's so much for everyone here. There's so many different aspects to the city, and I feel like everyone can feel at home in Seoul.
글로벌 매력 도시 서울, 파이팅!
글로벌 매력 도시 서울, 파이팅!